some time, myself and my colleague Jakob. We hold a course here at the Stockholm-Mälardalen of Dramatic Arts called Crossmedia from Storytelling to Distribution. And this is part of that course. And we're so happy to see that a lot of you have been able to join us for this special afternoon. This afternoon wouldn't have been possible without the support of Dell'Arte
and the Filmregion Stockholm-Mälardalen. I met Mirko and Joffe about 1.5 years ago, and we started to talk how could we cooperate to show these things to more people than the ones who are studying here. And that was quite easy. We just started to work together. And this is the first time that we do a seminar like this. And I don't know if I said that I come from Filmregion Stockholm-Mälardalen. I did, didn't I? And we are the production center in the capital region. And we work with film investment, we work with project development and film commissioning. Thank you.
Right, I'm also going to tell you that this event is broadcast as a live stream, and it's going to be saved as a webcast. So if you don't want to take notes, you can always go back and watch the webcast. I'm now going to deliver you into the safe hands of our moderator for the afternoon. Thank you very much for coming today, Andrea Reuter.
Tack. Yes, hi everyone. Thank you, Beata, and thank you, Josephine. As you said, my name is Andrea Reuter, and I'm going to be with you here for the next 4 hours of today's seminar about cross-media for kids. And during this whole seminar, you will be able to ask questions at the end of each speaker's speech or part of the program, but you will also be able to ask questions through Twitter. And as you see here, the hashtag is CMK12, and Josephine will help me with the Twitter questions. So if you come up with a question and you think you might forget it before the end of the speech, you can Twitter it away as soon as you come up with it. Today, as I said, we're going to have 4 hours, and we have 2 keynote speakers, very distinguished ones. It's Paul Tyler and Inga von Staden. And then we also have 3 very interesting cross-media projects for children from Sweden and Denmark that will be presented here today. Okay, without much further ado, I'm going to present to you the first speaker of today. The first keynote speaker. It's Inga von Staden, media expert. She is the director of a 4-year studies program at the Filmakademie Baden-Württemberg, where she trains students to develop and produce transmedial content. She has written and lectured on a range of subjects, among others on artificial intelligence, games, user-generated content, and animation. Welcome, Inga.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Josephine and Mirko. This is impressive, and it's wonderful to be here. And I think I'd like to invite you over to our school to teach our school how to do this kind of a thing, because certainly something that we haven't done yet. I'm going to talk a little bit about cross-media, the kind of essentials from my perspective. I'll intersperse it with some projects from our students, because Mirko asked me to do that. And then see if there's enough time to look a little bit into the driving forces behind transmedia, which are, among other, also economic forces. So when we talk about transmedia or cross-media or multi-platform media, or there are many words for one and the same phenomenon that we've been seeing in the past years, and that is that we see a convergence of media platforms and thus a convergence of media formats. I will call it transmedia because at the moment the biggest body of theory out there is under the name of transmedia. It was sparked off by Henry Jenkins in his book Convergence Culture and has been picked up by quite a few scientists working in the media science. At the base of all transmedia, cross-media, multi-platform media, whatever you want to call it, is a universe, which means not a story, and I'll come back to that later again and again. It's a universe. It can be a fictional universe, so it's been designed by someone like George Lucas, who designed the Star Wars universe, or it will be a documentary, a real universe that is being explored by a team of scientists or a team of media people. And in that case, what they will then do once they've done the exploration, and this is very natural to documentary filmmakers, is that they will then they will then derive a story out of that universe that they've explored. And sometimes they will even use fictional methods to do that. So most fictional films actually are based on a real universe. One of the biggest export media export products of Germany, which is Tatort. It's a crime series. It's based on a real universe, but they're fiction stories. The thing about transmedia is that once you've explored or designed the universe, you then start looking at all the different media formats that are within that universe. These can be stories translated into films. These could be actions translated into action simulations, or what we call games. These could be conversations translated into communities. These could be services translated into mobile apps. What it essentially means is that we have what we call a pre-development phase. Now, this is actually something that authors have been doing all their life. No author will go and start writing a script without having planned, designed, explored the universe. So what we're suggesting is that before you start writing the script, you actually sit down, you write what we call a content Bible or a universe Bible or a story Bible. Forgive the term, this is something I'm taking from the West Coast US. That's the way they call it. They call it story Bible. You basically document your exploration or your design in order to be able to give it to other creative teams that will then find that translation that is suitable for them out of that universe. And once you have then kind of figured out what media formats you're going to derive from that universe, you start building a media architecture. In other words, what you do is you have these different formats and you now think, how can they work together? How can we make them come together? How can they be intertwined? How can they interact with each other so that it becomes kind of like a whole experience? Now, there's different media architectures out there. There's open media architectures, or what is called transmedia worlds. A very nice example is the world of Harry Potter. You have different media windows that look onto that one universe, and the different media windows stand in themselves, but they do also correspond to each other. So I can be reading the book, which will be an experience in itself. I will not have to have seen the film, but if I've seen the film and if I've read the book and if I've played the game, I will have a yet broader sense of that universe. Another nice example is The Matrix. This is an example that was created by students of mine that work on the essence or on the principles of a transmedial world. They were approached by a film company that had designed 2 documentary films on the exploration of the world under Magellan and other explorers. And they wanted to offer that to the television station, which is Arte, with a bigger package. One of the problems that we see today is that many television broadcasters expect more than just the script today. They want to see the whole media package. So our students, some of our students came in on the project and started designing a game and an online content in the form of an interactive captain's logbook. For the game, they built a trailer which they took to the Gamescom, which is the games fair in Europe, where all the game industry meets and you pitch projects. And this trailer was specifically made to be pitched at the Gamescom.
Ferdinand II of Aragon. My good admiral, the fate of our kingdom is at stake. We must expand to new countries and foreign shores. We must strengthen our nation to secure the future of our crown. As the King of Spain, I command you to set out into the unknown. Find the finest spices, find silver and gold, and claim it all for the glory of Spain.
You're in control of the Spanish fleet. Embark on a quest to infinite riches and discover the secrets which lie beyond the horizon. Build colonies to secure Spain's supremacy in the New World. Patrol the seas and defeat those who challenge the Spanish crown. Use the wind and the strength of your ships to triumph over your enemies. If you succeed, your ships will control the trade routes, bringing Spain to new glory and wealth.
Pay heed. Your decisions bring victory or defeat. The fate of Spain lies in your hands.
When will you embark to New Horizon? New Horizon, conquest of the world. A journey begins which extends the browser-based strategy game into interactive captain's logs and a gripping docudrama TV series. Get on board.
The reason I show this trailer is not only because I'm terribly proud of my students, but because I want to pick up on some of the issues related to that later on. Obviously, this is not the kind of trailer that you pitch with Arte. This is really the kind of trailer you need to go to a games venue because they like this kind of heavy-duty drama. All right. The second kind of media architecture, and I'll refer to it again later, the second kind of media architecture that we see is what we call condensed architectures. Condensed architectures essentially have a story that drives the user to travel through different media platforms to experience the story. This is something that we've seen lately. There's several kind of renowned projects out there that use this kind of an architecture. One of the most famous propagators of this kind of storytelling is Lance Weiler. This is a project done by the Swedish Broadcasting. I'm sure all of you know it, The Truth About Marika. Does anybody not know it here? Raise your hand. Okay, so I'm not going to show the trailer. The Truth About Marika is a very beautiful example of how you can create transmedial storylines and have it really go through the different platforms, whether it's television drama or television talk shows, whether it's live events, gaming platforms, mobile content, web content. There was a huge body of content created around the storyline. This is an example that students of mine made to show how what a pitch has to look like if you're going to try to pitch a transmedia storyline to a commissioning editor at a television station or to anybody who wants to finance that kind of a project. So first of all, there's the visualization of the different episodes that the user journey goes through. What platforms does the user journey through and what does he experience on the different platforms? I'm just going to give you kind of like an idea of what that kind of a trailer could look like.
On August 12th, readers find a job ad in techie magazines like Wired for beta tests from the Kleins Foundation. a billion-dollar organization that wants to improve evolution by human enhancement technologies. Cellar is their new secret product. Cellar is the idea of inserting microprocessors into your brain that enable you to have internet in your head.
So I'm not going to go into the content here. It's more about kind of the setup. If you can't really see it because it's too dark, but the trailer shows the different levels, and it allows you to go through, it takes you through the different levels of this alternate reality experience, this transmedia storyline, and explains what is going to happen on each level, what platforms does the user travel through, what does he experience on the platforms, and how does this actually make the story come together. You need this kind of a document, this kind of a presentation, because transmedia storylines are very complex. So you also have to go into quite a complex preparation for the pitches. Another format that we've seen come up with the convergence of media, and I will include it in transmedia, though there are some I would say dogmatists that would say, well, that's not transmedia. But I think it belongs to this whole phenomenon. That's hybrid formats. They have been especially supported by Arte and by the National Film Board Canada. They come mainly out of the documentary arena and have found some beautiful ways to bring documentary film together with interaction and with data visualization. If you want to see some beautiful projects, I can suggest you go to the DocLab website or you go visit the iDocs website. These are resources that have been built by the documentary film festivals like ITFA or Sheffield. There's also a transmedia track featuring projects at Doc Leipzig. This is an example that I think is very beautiful, which was created after the Haiti earthquake. It was done by documentary filmmakers that were very annoyed by how media was portraying the aftermath of the disaster, and rather than make a linear documentary film, they made a documentary film showing three perspectives. So I can see the whole film from the perspective of the victim or the aid worker or the journalist, and at some points these storylines cross, and I begin to understand that there are different perspectives to this story, and I can actually switch the storylines. Another phenomenon that we see with the convergence of media and with the internet, and which is playing out very much so in transmedia, is the co-creative audience. The fact that today the audience has become accustomed to collaborating with content, to becoming to be a part of the creation, of the production, of the distribution of the content. They're very media wise. They have media tools at their hand that are affordable but highly professional. They can make and distribute media, and they want to be part of the world. This is a project called Iron Sky. It debuted at the Berlinale just a couple of weeks ago. I'll show the trailer. It's a finished product. I'm sure quite a few of you know it. Where? Oh, sorry, I need to go back on that. Can we do something about the sound? Because without sound. Okay.
Where
Thank you.
are we from? Siegfried. The Earth. And when did we leave? Brunhilde. 1945. Wonderful. And where did we go? The dark side of the moon. Brilliant.
Beginnen wir mit dem Meteor-Blitzkrieg und fegen alle diese Untermenschen von der Erdkarte.
We come in peace!
So this project managed to not only gain more than 150,000 euros through crowdfunding and crowd investment, which was a very serious gap financing. They also had the crowd come in form of crowdsourcing to help them find locations. Quite a bit of this was filmed on location in Frankfurt, which had been not only organized but completely organized by the community. A lot of the special effects in the film are done by the crowd, the community that contribute to the film, and they all then become stakeholders in this world. And obviously, once you're out there with your film, they all go to see their project, which essentially means that you're bringing your community in before the film's out in the cinema. There's a nice little anecdote to this one, is that at some point they found out that there was an Iron Sky game on the iPad, and they had no idea that they had commissioned this. So when they checked into it, they realized it was a couple of Chinese guys that had created the game with resources that they had found in the community. And they wrote a letter to them saying, we kind of would have appreciated if you would have told us that you're making the game, and you would have at least asked for the assets that you're using. And they got a letter back from the Chinese guy saying, well, you know, according to Chinese, the way we Chinese work with copyrights, we don't really do that. We don't ask for permission. But since you write us such a nice letter, we actually would be very interested in cooperating with you, and they are now cooperating. This is a project that picks up on the whole idea of the co-creative public and the fact that we have by now democratized production means, that there is do-it-yourself distribution means. It's cinema out of your backpack. This is just a little idea of what this offline and online film festival is about.
How to take part in the DSLR Film Festival. Let's pretend this is you. Everything you need has to fit in your backpack. Your idea, your DSLR, and your equipment. Prove it with a snapshot. Make a 3-minute movie to show you ready for the big screen. Choose either fiction or documentary, go out and shoot. Call for entries October 2010. It's time for good stories.
They actually had the event, and they had the online film festival and they had the offline film festival, and they will go on to make this a professional festival in the sense that they're taking it from this film school into the business world. But it's a nice example of how you today have to address your audience differently. They're not dumb users anymore. They're highly creative, semi-professional users. So let me take it from there to Crossmedia for Kids, because that's what the day is about. And I'll start with the fact that Crossmedia for Kids is kind of a no-brainer, as in most people making media for kids, they think cross-medial anyway. So this is a publishing house that's terribly successful in Germany, and I have to tell you that I'm a victim of it. I have an 8-year-old daughter, and I know all the voices and the characters by heart, and I wish sometimes I could escape from them because they're everywhere. They're on my girl's CD player, and they're on the internet, and they're on television, and they're in the movie theater, and there isn't a place that I could go without having to deal with Benjamin Blümchen and Bibi Blocksberg and Bibi and Tina. And so they're really, really good at transmedializing content. There's also a nice little anecdote here. Bibi Blocksberg was for the age group of originally 6 to 10-year-olds, and then they realized that the kids are also getting media smarter and wiser. So they had to basically redefine her, and they did that in 2 ways. First of all, the cinema outtakes on this are certainly addressed at 6 to 10-year-olds today. You wouldn't have been able to show these kind of films to kids that age 10 years ago. These are old figures. These worlds are about 15, 20 years old. The other thing that they did is they hijacked the horse world and had Tina come in, meet Bibi, and become a horse riding witch, which is also an interesting way to do it. For some reason, I can't show the trailer. Oh well, you can get the idea. It's girls and horses and adventures. So there you go. What I find very interesting when I start looking at transmedia and transmedia worlds is what are the driving parameters. Because we're leaving the stories. We are doing more than stories. Though I have to tell you at this point that there's a philosophical debate on that one, and not everybody agrees with me. But I claim that we're leaving stories, that we are now doing more than stories, and we need to see what drives the different formats. So a film always will be character-driven. That is, I mean, a story is around a character. But for instance, a game is action-driven. Most games don't really do well with characters, and they really don't do well with stories. So there's one or two famous characters from the games world, like Mario and Lara Croft, but for the amount of games out there, that's quite a few. Communities are collaboration driven. So here it's really more about what can we do together? How can we talk about this? How can we come together and create something together? Mobile applications are often service driven. So it's about accessing something, accessing a service. And I like to keep that in mind when I go into transmedia projects, because we need to kind of look at that world and see what kind of driving parameters it has. This is a project that's based on a fictional universe called The Inner World. It's, again, a student project. It is looking at developing an iPad game. They were funded nicely after their diploma. They got very nice funding. There's a lot of money out there for this kind of stuff to do this game. I'll just show an excerpt. It's in German. It just kind of shows you a little bit of how the interface on the iPad is to look like. This is an old trailer. But at the moment, they're not letting me use newer stuff because they know I show it everywhere. It gives you an idea of the kind of world that we're looking at. It's also going to be a television series. And obviously addressed to kids. And the reason I'm showing this, apart from showing off my students, forgive me, is because the iPad is certainly an instrument that if you're looking at kids or family entertainment, if you're looking at kids or family content, you should really, really take into consideration, especially if you're targeting Northern Europe. You might have some problems in Greece at the moment, but you certainly will want to be addressing an iPad or an iPhone in the northern region, because it has become the family entertainment center. It's unbelievable how it has really changed media consumption in families. So you should take it into consideration. It is better than just creating it for the PC if it is web-based. It is certainly better than if you're trying to have it on a data carrier. You simply have a different pricing model. The economic model behind it is more family-friendly. The whole way it is used is very family-friendly. This is an interesting world called Die Wilden Kerle. Die Wilden Kerle was designed by a guy called Massanek. It's the guy in the star there. And if you look at the picture of the trainer of the kids, of these football kids, you see there's quite a similarity. He scripted himself into the stories. This is a world that, again, it's not character-driven. It's really game-driven, because it's all about football. It's about soccer. And what Massanek did, he wrote these books, he wrote these stories in order to help his kids train soccer, because he was their trainer. And he found that it was very difficult to get them motivated to train, so he wrote books to help them with the training. The nice thing about the 11 books is they actually, each book has another protagonist from the team. So each book is told from the perspective, each story is told from a different perspective of the 11 team members. And to give you an idea of what it then, kind of how it translates into films.
Wir hatten alles erreicht. Wir waren bereit für den Freestyle Soccer Contest.
Der Nebel kommt jedes Jahr vor dem Finale.
Das wird immer gruseliger. Doch dann kam sie.
Ja, und wer ist das?
Beim heimlichen Kopfkissenzipfellutscher. Sie hat keinen Namen, weil das Graumen auch keinen hat.
Wir müssen alle Einzelwettkämpfe gewinnen.
Ich weiß, sonst haben wir nicht den Hauch einer Chance. Die ist eine Nummer zu groß für euch, Jungs.
Ach ja? Und woher willst du das wissen?
Ich bin's Plätze. Dich war ich.
Hey, und dich warn ich auch.
Deine Unterhose. Wie ich es hasse.
Ich nenne dich Horizon. Es ist nur ein Mädchen, Leon.
It goes on and on. As you can see, this is not your nice kind of FIFA football. This is wild football. This is self-invented soccer. Played in all kinds of scenarios. So one of the nice things he does is he takes soccer out of the green field. He takes it into industrial parks. He takes it into the woods. He takes it into all kinds of areas where you could be playing soccer, and shows the team to be a really wild bunch of kids. It's immensely popular in Germany. And the nice thing about it is, like the Harry Potter world, it grows. So the kids start with the first book when they're about 7 or 8, and they'll basically be going through it until they're 12. And now I'll just take a quick look at cross-media business, some of the driving forces behind cross-media or transmedia. Because I think it says a lot about how, at the moment, we're doing transmedia. So obviously, the most driving force is the fact that with transmedia, you are addressing more than one market. You're not addressing only the film market anymore. You're addressing the games market, you're addressing the web content market, you're addressing the mobile market. And what often filmmakers kind of realize very late is that these markets, they're valid. They have their own products, they have their own value chains, they have their own mode of conduct, they have their own venues, they have their own language. And you need to, if you want to address these markets, you need to be sure that you understand the language, that you know where to go with your project, with your pitches. That's why I showed you New Horizon, because they made that trailer specifically to address game publishers at the Gamescom. And they were successful doing so. Ubisoft has picked up the title and now wants to go with it. The thing about the kids transmedia is that whereas when you're doing kind of adult stuff, it's kind of, you know, you've got a couple of things there, but kids transmedia is so much more than that. It's, you're doing CDs and you're doing educational stuff and you're certainly doing print. And one of the big things is toys. So if you're doing kids transmedia, you should certainly look at the toys market. It is bigger than all media markets together. So that is where really the money is. So if you are looking at making revenues, which probably apart from funding you should be at some point, then toys is certainly something to be looking at. The revenue models in the different markets are very different. I'm just going to give you one example of a very popular revenue model that's out there at the moment that has profoundly changed the games market, and it has certainly profoundly changed the music market.
In the internet,
You can fill your shopping cart with small or large items and pay with your credit card. But very small items land directly in the clever MilliPay system. Paying with MilliPay is easy. You can leaf through your online newspaper, select an article, and with one mouse click, the MilliPay click, you confirm your purchase. You will receive the desired newspaper article, test report, or stock market data immediately. MilliPay is not a subscription. You only pay for what you need. Another example. You're doing research in an archive and find an interesting document. With the MilliPay click, you get access to the document at a mini price. Or, you need extra help for a computer game you're playing, MilliPay click, and you're back in the game with reinforcement. With MilliPay, paying is precise.
I don't get money from MilliPay. It's just one of the many systems out there. They just had the best trailer. Coming back to the experience that my students had with New Horizon, when they successfully managed to address a publisher like Ubisoft, they then very quickly had to realize that they had to change the game design, because Ubisoft clearly stated that they only are interested in game design that incorporates its own business model. They thought they were going to go out there and get a publisher like a television broadcaster to do a pre-sale, but that wasn't the case. The publisher said, we're only going to come in on the production if you can redesign the game to have micro payments included for virtual items in the game. So these are things that one has to take into consideration when one addresses different markets. As I mentioned, originally they had wanted to do a pre-sale to a commissioning editor. Now, the one thing that's nice about commissioning editors is mostly they're not monsters, but there's only so few of them, and they don't have a lot of money, so they actually do become monsters because you're trying to hunt them down, you're trying to get FaceTime with them, and you're trying to get them to like your project, and you're trying to get money out of them, and they can't. They just don't have all that money to give, and also they have very, very strict rules to go by in order to give you the money. So this is the one way to finance your project that has become more and more difficult, which is why many people have turned to transmedia, because they're looking for different ways to finance and fund their projects. There's many ways to finance a transmedia project, and there's many ways to fund a transmedia project. So you are now able to address many different funding bodies, not only anymore the Regional Film Fund or the European Film Fund. You can now address funding bodies specialized in digital content. You can address funding bodies specifically funding games. You can address funding bodies specifically funding technology. Remember I told you about the one project that got very nice funding after they finished with their diploma? That was the Digital Content Fund in Baden-Württemberg. So they only give money to those kind of experiences. They don't give money to films. They will also give money to films, and they will also do co-funding, which is also very nice. So you can actually get money for the film and the game in your transmedia experience from the two different sectors and the funding body. Technology funding is something that very, very few media people really look into, and that's a pity because there's a lot more funding out there for technology than there is for content. And if you are doing a transmedia project, you will most likely be developing some form of software. So if you are, you can go out and get it funded. There are technology funding bodies that will help you. One of them is Investitionsbank Berlin. And that brings me to cross-financing, which is a reason why a lot of producers look at transmedia, is because they now have the possibility with the different funding out there and the different financiers out there from the different markets to do what we call cross-financing. If they don't manage to get enough pre-financing for their film, they can do some gap financing by getting money for a different format. They can also use funds from the game to go into the development of the script for the film. It basically means you have a bigger pot of money, obviously for a bigger budget, because transmedia is more complex than just doing a film, but it allows you to be more flexible in how you start working on what with whom. And what is very important when you do start working on the different formats in your transmedia world is that you look for synergies. The more synergies that you can find, the more successful you are. This foundation, the National Geographic Foundation, which is a foundation for the distribution of geographic knowledge, became one of America's biggest media corporations by doing just that. So they give money from the foundation to a scientist to explore a subject like the mummies in South America. Then they will add a team of media experts to that scientist who will then look at what can we do with this? How can this go into the radio, the television? How can this become print, a magazine, a book, a film? And they will then try to set up in pre-production a very synergetic production mode so that the film within that transmedia world is cheaper than if you had done it on your own. So essentially they are producing products at a cheaper price. They today not only run magazines, they run television channels, radio channels, they run the biggest e-learning platform in the United States, they run a museum, they publish books, they co-produce films, they're doing a lot of stuff, and most of it derived from the fact that they were very smart at creating synergies. Sorry, missed out on translation there. One of the very popular models in the old media world is licensing. There's still quite a few transmedia producers who work with a licensing model. If you're interested in knowing more about that, I can recommend Nuno Bernado's The Producer's Guide to Transmedia, who developed Sophia's Diary and managed to license this out into about 15 different countries. It was a very successful transmedia format, which originally started with SMS streams, because he was addressing young girls, the age of 11 to 14, and knew that the one way to get them was through SMS. And it started off as an SMS stream, then went on to become a web series, a television series, its own magazine, a book, etc. It is now a transmedia format that he licenses out to different language regions. So this is a possibility to do financing as well. And last but not least is branded content. I like to show this example.
Give a little love, and it all comes back to you. You're gonna be remembered for the things that you say you do. You give a little love, and it all comes back to you. You're gonna be remembered for the things that you say and do. You give a little love and it all comes back to you.
So this is based on the world of Grand Theft Auto. It's a machinima that was made with the Grand Theft Auto engine. Machinima is films that are made with game engines inside a game. It's the convergence of the words machine, cinema, and animation. It was commissioned by Coca-Cola who wanted to obviously tap into the Grand Theft Auto community, and it plays on the fact that the Grand Theft Auto world is anything but politically correct. So there's quite a lot of humor in that if you know Grand Theft Auto. And the reason that brands are very interested today in looking at transmedia is because they know that with a transmedia experience, you often manage to address more than just one target group. You manage to address different audiences. You manage to pick up audiences that like to sit and listen to stories, as well as audiences that like to play games. Because you see, this is very old in human culture. We've always had people sitting around the fireplace telling each other stories, and we've always had guys out on the soccer field playing soccer, playing football. And very often the guys or the girls playing games didn't have a lot of patience to listen to stories, and vice versa. If you ask me what I want to do on an evening, I will certainly always want to go to the cinema rather than play games, whereas my students will always want to play games rather than go to the cinema. And this is not because they're younger, this is because they're just gamey. They're just those kind of people. And you address different target groups. So you can address people that you wouldn't find in front of the television. You can address people that you wouldn't find sitting with a book. You can address people that are browsing the web, that are playing on a console. And last but not least, one of the driving factors that we're seeing with transmedialization is the whole thing of crowdfunding. So the fact that because we can tap into the co-creative audience, we can also tap into their fandom. We can try to get them to come on board and to help us not only with the financing, but also with the production, with knowledge, with know-how. And I'll kind of tell you a little story about Peter Jackson, who, I don't know if you know this, but when he started going into pre-production for Lord of the Rings, he went off to New Zealand and thought he was quite safe there. Little did he know that the huge Lord of the Rings community knew everything that was going on in pre-production. They knew whom he was casting, who was being casted. They knew what kind of designs they were doing in production design. They knew everything. So he at some point had to engage a community manager in order to handle the community. And at some point, the whole thing turned around from being a curse to being a bliss, because when it came to production, they suddenly realized that they didn't have a coach to teach the elves in the film Elvish. And the only people that did know that were members of the Lord of the Rings community. Nor did the production designer know how to write Elvish. So he had to recruit people from the community to do the writing for them. And there's many little examples of how the community came in on that production. And with that, I close, and thank you very much, and open for questions.
Thank you, Inga. So, yes, I have sound as well. Let's see, is there anyone in the audience that has a question? You can think about it for a while, and I'm going to start with, you said that the iPad is the core media outlet for families. What would you say are the benefits of this specific technology? What do you have to think about when you do something for the iPad?
Well, if you imagine this was an iPad, how I like to portray the iPad is that really it's like a window on this media cloud, okay? And you can basically choose and pick what part of this cloud, what part of this world you're now going to be looking at through this window, whether it's an interactive part of the world, or is it a more story-driven part of the world, or is it more a conversational part of the world? So it's really become a window, and it's a shared window. So whereas this is very much an individual window, although you will often see young people in a pub or so, showing themselves the latest apps, what you often see in family environments is the whole family sitting around an iPad, interacting with the iPad. Now, don't ask me about It used to be the fight about the remote control. Now it's the fight who gets to touch. So that would be a very interesting thing to actually watch, is how do families interact with an iPad, and who actually controls the game or controls the flow of the experience. But this is what we often see.
And there is no research done on this subject that you know about?
I would be more than surprised if there isn't.
Yeah.
But I, at the moment, don't have any knowledge. That might be something that Paul Tyler could talk about. I don't know if you have any knowledge of whether they're researching into that.
I'll make something up.
Okay, good.
He's going to make something up for later. Perfect. Is there anyone in the audience that has a question? Yes, I think you are getting a microphone from over there.
Hello.
Please go ahead.
Hi.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Well, I work with theatre, so I work with the Riksteatern, the National Theatre here in Sweden, and we are a touring theatre. And I'm, of course, interested in the live performances, and I wonder how you can place live performances. You know, we have musical festivals, and we have live enactments of communities, and how you sort of place this in this transmedia context.
Live events are very important factors in transmedia storylines. So if you look at transmedia storylines designed by Lance Weiler, Pandemic, for instance, you will see that a lot of it has to do with live events. And you have all the theatrical spectrum coming in. Actors, directors, it really, that's one of the charms about transmedial experiences, is that, again, you can take these smart tools and you can bring them into the live event. So the live event has a media layer to it, and the media leads into the live event, and the live event bleeds into the media realm. So there's quite a lot being done around that. What I can sense is that it is, at the moment, more in the adult content range. I haven't seen any transmedia storylines for kids. That's got a little bit to do with the fact that they are very time-consuming. So you kind of need a target audience that isn't stuck in school. You need a target audience that kind of sees the day as a 24-hour event. This is all very new. So the first transmedia storylines came out about, the official ones 3 or 4 years ago. So I think it has time to grow. And theater is certainly has a very profound part in it. Did that answer your question?
Well, I have a lot of follow-up questions, but I'll save them for later.
I'd love to talk to you later. Our school is together, one of the only school in Germany, and I understand that here it's a little bit the same. We're together with the theater department. We have a theater school and a film school. And actually, it's through the transmedia experiences that the students are starting to come together, which I think is really nice, because
so it's a recent development.
It's a recent development, and it's now that these two schools that used to be very separate are coming together and working together.
I have a question. You were talking about how the media literacy of children is changing so fast that the age group, the target group that they were thinking of, 6 to 10-year-olds, they have to readjust it downwards. So I was thinking about the role of the parents in this, and the media literacy of the parents, and if, how they affect each other, because I guess there are some early adopting parents, but there are some parents that have no clue. And what about the children? Is that totally related to the kind of parents you happen to have, or does it come from somewhere else, this literacy?
Okay. First of all, I have to tell you that my philosophy is kids' entertainment should be family entertainment, because I think it's very important that it is designed in a way that it's fun for parents to interact with their kids around that content. And this is from my very personal experience, because as I showed you from Kiddings Verlag, I really I really can't bear listening to that stuff for a long time. So I'm kind of really, really grateful when people come along and make family entertainment. So it's got this great layer for kids, but it's also got a great layer for grown-ups.
Like the Pixar movies, for example.
Exactly, or what David Khaled did, or Cornelia Funke is very good at doing that with David Huna and things like that. So, I have to say that also the US is very good at creating family entertainment. Nonetheless, as much as I wish I was part of the media experience of my daughter, I'm not. I mean, you know, this is her realm, and kids do go off into media spaces, and they're on their own. If you want to teach your kids how to do privacy settings on Facebook, try to be a friend with them on Facebook. That's the way to teach your kids how to do privacy settings on Facebook. It's not about forbidding or things, it's being with them in there, and they hate it. And they'll make sure you can't be. So what we see is that content that we used to make for kids that are 6 to 10 is now for kids that is 3 to 6. We see that a Harry Potter world is, and I mean, we're talking Harry Potter 6 and 7. This is consumed by kids that are 10 and 11. I don't really think it's ideal, but that's what's happening. So kids are accessing media that actually wasn't really made for them or isn't truly suitable for them. There's a huge issue around that, and you can put all kinds of labels on it. Kids are going to get the stuff. You know, and if they don't get it at home, they're going to go to their neighbor and they're going to go get it, or they're going to go find it in school. So kids are very media savvy, and we've seen them also with interactivity. They are much more interactive and much faster than their parents. And I can always tell a game designed by grown-ups who've just become interactive. Because a kid would never design a game like that. They're just so much more agile than we are. So you really make sure if you're going to design interactive content for kids, get a game designer on there because they know what they're doing. Grown-ups usually don't really know about interactivity for kids.
Okay. Thank you, Inga.
You're very welcome.
Let's give her a round of applause. Okay, now we're going to take a break of a couple of minutes, and if you really need to maybe visit another part of the building or something like that, you can do it, but we're going to start at 2 o'clock sharp again.
New technology, but also having the stories from the other side. So we try to point out to see what's in this. How can we reach each other on the other sides?
And you started having workshops with kids and young people. Konst och lov.
Yes, that's a project we're doing right now. At the beginning, I can show you some
please
pictures. Let's see if it wants to connect with this.
It worked in the break, of course.
Of course. Let's see.
You can also, yeah. Yes, now it works. Perfect.
Have to be closer, maybe. In the beginning, we did a drama called Down on Earth. It was produced by Örebro Länsteater. And we wanted to see, I started to work with Stockholm University and computer and system science. And we felt in love because we both wanted to see if we can work with people getting to know the drama before they came to the theater. So we started a theater online where the audience could interact with the story of the drama. And this is just some picture from that website. And we also did project where the kids could draw paintings from the story of the drama. And so when they came to the theater, they knew that they had been a part of this building, the scenography or the stage design. And they also were very involved in what the drama was about. Here's the actors performing, and behind them you see the wall that was painted by the kids in the area. But this was a very much of a start just to get to know each other. We wanted to step out from the theater. We want to go out from the black box to see if we could work on the mobile phone, for example. So we did Antigone's Diary. It's a mobile phone drama. And
Maybe we could start by looking at the trailer and then talk about the project.
Telia Sonera is the leader of the Swedish telecom market, with Telia, Halebop, Skanova, and Cygate targeting different market segments. Mobile phone penetration is over 139%, and new services and areas of use are emerging. One of these is the Kista Mobile Theatre. Forget dusty theaters with a clientele of elderly upper-class people. The future theater is in your cell phone. In Husby, a northern suburb of the Swedish capital Stockholm, Kista Theatre is now playing the world's first mobile drama, Antigone's Diary, an ancient drama in an interactive version. When you arrive at Kista Theatre, you're equipped with a cell phone and headphones. To start the show, you click on the theatre application in the cell phone. While walking around in the various locations in Husby, you hear actors performing their lines, together with specially composed music.
23 april, mitt på dagen. Tobaksaffären.
Vilka då?
Ja, pressen, polisen, gamarna.
Varför det?
Ja, de ville veta om jag har sett något.
The urban environment and sculptures of Husby represents the stage and set design. By using satellite navigation, the cell phone keeps track of where you are and which act to play. When a scene is completed, you advance to the next location. After each act, you're asked to answer a question related to the drama. The answers are collected on the web, where you can see how other visitors have responded. Like a high-tech crossover between a drama and a guided tour, this device fits today's youth perfectly. Accessible and innovative, and all you need is a cell phone. The synergy between art and technology is obviously infinite. This is the future.
That's a great claim. This is the future. I was wondering why you chose an ancient Greek drama to base the play on.
I think it's very much the ground for dramatic storytelling, and also we were working in workshops with the research group from the university, and we found out that the kids in this area wanted to tell us about lines that was not seen by me, but for them it was very physically, that there were lines that you were not able to pass by, and if you did, it had some consequences.
Invisible borders?
Yes, yes.
Like what?
This is the nice side of Kista, and we are living on the bad side. And you can see the line here, where it's here. Or this is the schoolyard. We are not able to pass this because this is for the teachers. And different kind of borders that you could pass or not. And I was very interested in those lines, so we started a group with the girls, like 10 girls, and worked for half a year with lines. And we also wanted to see what kind of story do you tell if you're using the mobile phone as a tool. And we started to SMS each other about questions, and I was pretending that I was the Antigone myself and said, I'm going to burn down the school. And they said, no, don't. Why? And we have a question about what can you do and who decides what you are going to do.
So the play, as we saw in the trailer, you walk around with a mobile phone, and then you come to kind of like stations that represent each scene, and then you push play and you hear the scene. So what's the interactive part then in that?
They can answering questions that Antigone is answering, and they don't want to answer.
So at the end of each scene, she poses a question that they can answer as a text.
And it's not questions about yes or no. It's more deeply that what makes you scared, or what's freedom means to you. See if I have some. No, it doesn't work. And all this answers was collected on the website, and also on the phone you can see what other visitor answering. So that interactions was done.
And this was an application that you developed specifically for this theater play. And you worked together with the university and with
yes, it was
more commercial partners?
No, not really commercial. Or it's a small productions team called Klevgren Production.
Okay.
It's a group of musicians who developed a GPS-connected musical sensor. When you are walking around, the music doesn't cut like that. It's turning down, so it's very smooth, the technology in this drama.
Okay. So you're here to talk about Antigone's Diary, but also about another play that you did as a director called Lisa and Otto. Maybe you can play the trailer and we can take a look at it.
Let's see if I have it here. Yes, this is Lisa and Otto. We had premiere in February this year, and let's see here.
Husby är klart. Väntar vi bara på Kista. Kista är färdiga. Släck publikljuset, sätt på ljudeffekten och gör det nu. Adam, nu.
Jag har alltid tänkt på mig själv som en neutron. Ja, ni vet. En subatomär partikel.
Det är något jag borde förstå.
Jag har tagit fel på tiden. Konserten börjar om 20 minuter.
Jaha, du vill inte be om ursäkt. Bara ovanligt att se dig ha bråttom.
Jag borde verkligen inte missa. Beethoven.
Men visst, det borde ha varit jag och Otto som skrev artikeln, men så var det inte. 1938. Krig. Judinna på flykt. Skulle Otto ha erkänt vårt samarbete?
Ville du inte ha mig?
Jag vet inte.
Du avstod från livet.
Jag skulle inte vilja byta plats med Edith. Du får förlåta, men hur lycklig blev hon av familjelivet?
Men du skulle ha blivit lycklig.
Okay, maybe you can explain a little bit.
Yeah. See what you got. Mm. Yes. I don't know what
well,
what you can
it looked
see.
like the female and the male actor were in totally separate places.
Yes. We tried to separate the actors and the audience, and they had communication through fiber, and the drama was written for these two stages. So through technology, they had a meeting on the screen, and also the audience were involved in the end of this story when we pointed out the camera. So the audience had a feeling that they were sitting beside the other side. So the science audience in Kista were nearby the kids in Husby.
Okay, so it was divided into a children's audience and an audience of...
Yes, you can say that.
Science.
Yes. Mm.
Okay.
Mm. And it's all produced from here, from this Sada, by a producer, picture producer. Yes. What else do you want to know?
Well, maybe you could just talk a little bit about what you're doing right now. You're developing something new?
For the stage, I'm working with another woman. I have a project called Women in Science. Mm. So the next woman we are going to present is Ada Lovelace, who discovered the computer. And I think this could be a really web-produced drama or an iPad after this meeting here, an iPad drama, where you can connect with this very interesting woman, Ada. So that's a series that we're producing, Women in Science, where Lisa Meitner was the first one. She discovered the nuclear fusion, but she didn't have the Nobel Prize. It was Otto Hahn who has the Nobel Prize for her discovery. So that's why we wanted to separate them, because they did the discovery when they were separated. Through letters they found out how the nuclear was functioned. So that was the intent, to just separate the actors and the audience, to see if there was some energy in it, if there comes some other energy that we haven't discovered before. And that was a very big project.
The technology was after the content.
Yes.
Yeah. Or because of the content.
Yes.
I know there's a lot of future producers here in the audience and in the audience online as well. Could you give some advice to them on how to work with cross-media projects like this? What have you learned through your experience?
I'm very connected to being on a place, to see what's in just the specific place. So for me it's very much coming out from the meetings with the people and the audience that we are going to play for. And I think that's...
So it's getting to know your audience?
Yes, just to see what are they interested in, to take the questions from them. And
you said you worked with a reference group of girls for Antigone's Diary, so that's a way to...
Yes.
To do that?
Yes, we also do very much of workshops, something called art camps, and where we involve the community to, if they want to learn something about digital photo or film, they can come to these art camps. And they get to know also the artistical schools in Stockholm. So the artistical schools here are represented in these art camps. So they will have teacher or students from the art schools teaching them something about music or how to write your own your own music or something. So I think if you have a project going on with the one you are going to make dramas for, it's very, very, how do you say it? It's very good material to find out something from that.
To use the reference group, to use the audience that you're targeting your product to. Okay, now I think we should open up for questions from the audience and from Twitter. And since I don't have the feed while up on stage, I'm going to ask Josephine if there's some questions coming in. Okay, there's one in the audience. Please just wait for the mic and then go ahead.
Hello. You said something about the special energy that you were looking for, some new energy. Did you find any new energy? Like, did you gain anything special with?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was some kind of longing for the other actors. You had the drama is about the conflict between this two person who loves each other and who make each other disappointed. And through the technology, I think the longing was stronger than it had been if they had been in the same room. So that I think so. We have some here in the audience who was there. Yes.
There's a new question. Go ahead.
Hi, thanks for your presentation. One of the obvious benefits of technology is the fact that you can, your users or your audience can give you instant feedback. But when you're combining this traditional sort of, theater with young people, how do you measure impact? Like, how do you go back and say, okay, it was just new, and we did something creative, but did that play really sort of take its shape as it would have done in a traditional form? Is it just a new form of doing something, or do you see added benefits? With young people, do they feel connected to theater now because of it, or are they more inclined to do more things like that? I'm just sort of curious if that feedback is coming back to you in this process.
I think we educate each other all the time, and I think the theater has to be on the new platforms if the theater is going to still be alive. And I think the audience, I've been doing very much theater for young kids and so on, and pressing them into the theater room. And it can be painful for both the actors and the audience. So if we are trying to reach out to each other on the new platforms where you can interact, or where it's easier to understand why is this drama interesting for me, or how do I see it? What's my point of view in this drama? I think the audience are more involved, and I think the theater also get more interested in the audience, and so on, diverse.
I'm just curious, have the students, for example, in that video with the two mobile phones, have they come back and told you that? Or how was that measured?
No.
I'm just going to, since you don't have the mic anymore, have you measured the impact somehow, or the feedback from the people that have seen the play, the young people, how it affected them?
It's very different. It's difficult, even if you are on the stage, to see what does the audience think about this. They can laugh or they can cry, but mostly they just sit there and listen. So it's very. But since we are having these art camps at the holidays, they continue coming. So hopefully they had something out of it.
Okay. So the audience coming back,
yes, they do. But they're also growing. So a year is a long time. So you have the new audience all the time.
Okay, I think we need to round up here. Give a big thank you to Rebecca. Okay, we're going to take another very short technical break, and now I'm actually going to ask the audience to stay in the room since we're having the coffee break in half an hour. Now I'm joined on stage by Jakob Balslev over here and Petter Madegård, Danish and Swedish, but based in Copenhagen at the Danish Film School. Yes. And you're going to talk about an interactive experience you've created for children, and I'm just going to leave the stage to you guys. Let's give them a welcoming applause.
Thank you so much, and hello in Shanghai too. We have prepared a little presentation. Thank you so much for the invitation. We've worked on this in the National Danish Film School for 3 years, and it's a concept we're calling Cinema Dell'Arte. I'm the producer, Petter is the director and the inventor of it. Petter's going to give a short presentation, and if it's too technical, please, I think we can just answer questions on the way during the presentation. Yeah. And then we're going to talk shortly about the future plans of it, and then take another round of questions. But, Petter?
Yes. Well, I'm the inventor of Cinema Dell'Arte, and Cinema Dell'Arte can be described as live animation theater, or an animated film that is being produced live. And the main reason why I want to do live animation is because we can create a direct contact between the characters on screen and the audience, making it into an animated film without the fourth wall, that the term you use in theater. So that if, for example, someone in the audience is about to go, the characters on the screen can say, "Oh, I'm sorry, is it boring? Can we do something else to chase this? We can do it faster." Yeah. I've heard that Ingmar Bergman, when he did his shows, his plays on Dramaten in Stockholm, he used to write in the pamphlet, "Hostning undanbedes." And that means something like, "Please do not cough during the show." And my theater teacher, when I was studying theater as an actor, he always taught me that if the audience is coughing, it's because they are being unfocused, or they are unfocused. And the reason why they are unfocused is probably because something is wrong on the stage. It's probably boring. But this is, I think it's very fascinating that he's actually allowed, was allowed to do this, because it says something about how the way we have been raised as an audience. We can go into this theater and think it's okay that Ingmar Bergman tells us not to cough. and for me, it's totally absurd, and that's why I want to make some kind of new theater. It's about, I think this is the main reason why we want to make shows for kids, because kids are not destroyed by Ingmar Bergman yet. And if they are unfocused, they cough, and you cannot do anything about it. And so we need to raise new generations of theater hooligans. And I forgot, the reason why I call it Cinema Dell'Arte is because I have this big love for Commedia dell'arte, which is an old theater form from the Renaissance of Europe or Italy. And I wanted to make something new in this tradition, so I took Commedia dell'arte and I took cinema and I combined it. So how is this done? I will first talk about the technical part of it, and then we will show you a little clip to give you more of a feeling of it. And you can see, can everybody see this picture? Yeah. This is all taking place at the same time. It's taking place live or real time or whatever you want to call it. In the right, you have the audience. They are sitting in a cinema, and they are watching an animated film with these stupid characters on the screen. But they can also talk with the characters, and the characters will talk back to them, and they can see each other, and they can build relations or whatever you want. And on the right, you have the other room where the actors are standing. The actors are getting a live feed of the audience, a video feed. You see, there's a camera, what do you say, on top of the screen. So what we're doing is we're trying to simulate a theater scene for the actors to stand in. And the actors are standing in motion capture suits. And motion capture is a technology that you use to record only the movements of the actors. And I think if you have seen Avatar, you have seen the result of it. So we are sending this feed from the actors into the computer that renders the frame or the picture or the movie. And that means that in this computer we have this fictive world, the animated world, the film, and with the characters, the backgrounds, and if it's raining, we have rain and all that. And the actors are moving the characters. So we send it back to the screen. And I think it's like half a second delay or something. So it's more or less real time. And in this means that if the actress does like this, the characters on screen does like this. Yeah.
Vad fan är det där? Vad är det där?
Det är jorden!
Det är jorden? Den är ju sprängd!
Ja, den är sgu sprängt i luften, Peter!
Vem sprängde jorden? Vem gjorde det? Är du helt dum i huvudet?
Ja, du är helt dum i huvudet, man! Fuck, man!
Du skulle rädda jorden!
Du skulle rädda jorden, man!
Vad svärt är det att rädda jorden?
Ja, du skulle rädda jorden, Roberto, man! Du är helt fucked, du är!
Men jag har ju inte sett så. Håll käft!
Håll käft!
Ja, det är alltså mig der har skrivit manus.
Guldjagt, der sidder sådan her med benet. Hallo, man må jo ikke. Hallo, man må ikke have benet op på stolen.
Er det mig, du taler til?
Nej, det er hende pigen der ved siden af ham dreng i jakkesættet. Hej. Hej, kan du se mig? Er det din kæreste? Ja, hej. Er du hendes kæreste? Nå, okay. Er der nogen singler herinde? Prøv at se. Jeg har den her. Hallo, mig, de griner bare. Det er sgu da en blå pik, man. Kan I ikke se det?
Yes. No? It's approved by Ingmar Bergman. And this was an earlier production I made at the film school. It was called Last Hope for Mission Doom. And it was a science fiction movie that collapsed because the characters was too stupid to play their parts. And it was kind of a technical experiment. The audience didn't know what they was prepared. What we gave them, they didn't know it was live, so it was a shock for them. And yeah. Let's see, what have I written as next? Yeah. So we do it live, and this means that we cannot make animated film the way you traditionally make animated film. It takes a really long time because film is made up by 24 frames a second, and each frame has to be rendered or drawn up or whatever, and it takes a long time. And we have to make 24 frames a second all the time, so to speak. So we do it with a game engine. And a game engine is what you use when you make games, computer games. And it's basically the tool that it's kind of the matrix in the matrix, the program that generates the world. And it's really, really cool to work with. It's just a world that you can play around with. And this also gives us opportunity to work with gameplay elements. So we take the world of game into the theater. For example, if we are making a fairy tale with the princess that are flying on a dragon, all of the audience can actually steer the dragon with their bodies, like tilting to the right, and the dragon will steer to the right. And this concept is called human joystick. And I'm just going to show you a small example of it. How much time is it left?
8.5 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Let's speed up.
So, yes, yes. So just move on. So the next step in our work is that we are trying to get out of the cinema because of this contract with the audience that we are so used to sit down and not interfere and so on. So we want to try to build a new room that the audience comes into and have this feeling of something unfamiliar that can open up to more playfulness. And it's a little hard to see, but right now this is for the next big project, and we are building this big like fairy tale forest for the audience to sit in. And you have some concept up there, and right down on the bottom it's where we are building the stuff and so on. But
it's built from the animated universe created in there. So what you see on top is the actual frame from the film, and then below is the model for the forest we're building. Yeah.
Yes, and this is a part of my big graduation show. I think we can just take the next slide. This is my graduation film at film school, and it premieres in June this year, based on The Princess and the Frog. And it's for kids, 5 to 11 years old. And we are putting the kids in the middle of the show in this big forest, and we try to give them as much opportunities as possible to interact with the story and communicate with the characters and so on. Yep. Yes. So this is that's what we are doing right now, and I just want to talk about some of our thoughts about this and the future. Because, I mean, what we are trying to create is theater as a party. That is for me, the tradition of Commedia and the Carnivalesque. And the funny thing about the digital revolution or the digitalization of film and music is that it actually puts focus on the live performance or the concerts or so on. And also in film, we have been talking about the industry has been afraid of, like people don't go to cinema anymore because they have their own home theater system now, so they will just download the film on Pirate Bay in full HD and they won't pay anything. But actually people are going more and more to the cinema. And I think it's not just because it's better. You have this big screen, and you cannot have this system at home, and you have the 3D right now with the avatar and everything. It's also because I think it's more something more fundamental that people are seeking when they go to the cinema. I think it's about feeling like connected to this bigger context, and feeling connected to the group, to experience this as a group. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to put focus on the audience. Yes. And in the future, we want to build our own Cinema Dell'Arte house, and franchising, and make a lot of money, of course, but also it's kind of like inspired by Cirque du Soleil, for example. And in this Cinema Dell'Arte house, we can have both like scenes for kids, stages for kids, or rooms for kids, and also for grown-ups, and we can have experimental shows, and we can have like big commercial shows. And I think the most commercial part of this is making like complementary films or complementary live shows to what do you say, big animated films. I mean, imagine, for example, Finding Nemo. Like kids sit home and watch Finding Nemo every day for 1 year, like day out and day, and they do it. And the parents are getting crazy, but the kids loves it. It gives them like comfort or secure. It feels secure. So we can do a live version of Finding Nemo, and they can come and see the live version. It's slightly different, and they can shout at Nemo, and he will talk back to them, and so on. So that's why we are so interested in kids as an audience, and we are really looking forward to the Princess and the Frog premiere and see what the reactions is. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was very inspiring.
Good.
So I thought maybe I have one question before we open up for the audience, which is about the interaction. Mm-hmm. So what we saw the examples here was people talking to the characters and them talking back, and the human joystick. Are there even more ways of interacting, and what are those?
Well, I'm working with a guy who works with like a crowd warm-up. Like he can warm up big crowds with this rhythm plays. Like everybody does this rhythm. What do you say? Rhythmleker.
Just like, playing with rhythms.
And games. Yeah, where the audience is synchronized in making this, and it's kind of the team building stuff that he uses. And this could also be used in ways to affect the story. In the Princess and the Frog, in the end, there will be a battle, because we have this, the antagonist is Nyckeln or Nyckeln. I think every Swede now is in plays the fiddle. And the
naked guy in the stream.
Yeah, the naked guy in the stream.
It's a folklore, Swedish folklore.
And the frog, he learns, the prince turns into a frog, and he learns this rhythm thing. He learns that it's actually fun to be a frog, because he can jump like this, and it creates a rhythm. So they will battle, because the Nyckeln is playing the fiddle, and the princess is in a trance. This is very complicated, but in the end, it's a battle between the frog and the Nyckeln, and the whole of the audience can actually take part in this rhythm thing, and
on the frog's side.
Yeah, on the frog side.
And will only succeed if the audience actually participates, and if he can get the whole crowd to participate, he will win over there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's also a way of creating interactivity.
Cool. Mm-hmm. So do we have a question on Twitter?
We have a question from Film Marketing, Alpha Panda in London, asking about the business model of combining high costs that is, producing animation with a limited audience of live events. How will that work?
Yeah, that's a good question. We're not sure that the audience is actually that limited. but I mean the unique experience but it is a theater. I mean, we have, for example, stand-up comedy shows in Denmark that attracts like 300,000 people doing the same show, and people revisiting the show because it's they hope something new is going to come up, and we hope to get the same people to come in again and again, and to play the same show for a year maybe. But of course it's and actually the production costs. I mean, if we're gonna start this company and we're gonna buy the equipment for our company and just do. I think we can keep the production costs pretty low actually. At least we've managed to do that so far. But yeah, that's a good question, and it's what we struggle with right now.
It's kind of a follow-on question. Having seen the motion capture technology changing from being extremely high-tech and expensive, I've also recently seen the portable low-tech versions, and I can imagine that we soon will see the home edition motion capture equipment. Do you see this changing or affecting your thoughts and ideas for the future?
Well, I mean, the important part is that we can capture the performance of the actors, and the cheaper, the better. I mean, it makes it easier for us to go on tours if the equipment is easy to fix, a rig, like, for example, the Kinect. So yeah.
But maybe you could think of people participating from home, maybe, or if that's what you mean, like rolling out, yeah.
So they could be like avatars at home strapped to motion.
Maybe.
Yeah, or at least you can capture a part, like one individual of the audience can actually play a character on screen. That would be so awesome, like a 5-year-old girl playing Thor, the mighty god of war, or something like that. That would be cool.
Or people at home designing characters for us, maybe. That would be nice.
That would be cheap, at least.
My question goes also in the direction of audience participation. So first of all, when is the premiere? What day? And is there any way to participate in the premiere from outside of your film school?
Yes. Yeah. It's June. We're playing 5 shows in June in the week. I think we're starting the 13th. Yeah, we would love for you to come.
But there's no way participating outside of the physical.
Do you have a media window? Will you be streaming this or anything like that?
I think right now the point of it is that you have to experience the live. You have to experience it live.
But the thing is, you could actually put it up on the internet and not be afraid of people. I mean, they could see it because they would maybe have to come and see it for real because it's not the same experience for that. But I think, I mean, yeah, maybe we're gonna do a documentation like the one you saw, and maybe put it up on the web. But that would be
more like a trail.
Yeah, and for funding, and I mean, this is as I see it pretty obvious to try to do some crowdfunding for this project. That would be what we will use that trailer for.
More questions? Okay. Then I think we should round up here and give a big thank you to Jakob and Petra. And Josephine, you wanted to say some words before the coffee break.
No, I'm just going to talk to the camera, so you can all go and have a coffee break. I do that. I have a few nods and waves to send out.
Yeah, and we start again in half an hour. Keynote speaker, and it's the concept developer Paul Tyler from Kia, the Copenhagen School of Design and Technology. And you're going to talk about designing interactivity, and I'm going to leave the floor to you.
All right.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. It does feel like an incredible distance, doesn't it? I was a bit worried during the break because I was up here kind of preparing myself and getting myself ready. And then I suddenly thought, I wonder if they've actually turned off the web feed. I just wondered whether or not people were just sitting at home watching while I was kind of talking to myself. Two things. In a way, my talk is going to be a bit like, it's a bit like a cake that you've just taken out of the oven, and you're not too sure whether or not by sticking that knife in to see if it's cooked or not is actually going to ruin the cake or not. So I'm slightly worried because it's, in a way, when I often do talks, I often intentionally make sure that it's the first time I've baked them, as it were. And so it may well be that halfway through this talk, you might stick your finger into this cake and then come out with wet sponge. I don't know. But let's see what happens. And the reason for that is because, and I'll explain a little bit about it more in a sec, is that for the last couple of years, I've been working in a particular field in marketing and communication and commerce, which is an area that I don't normally work in. And I come from sort of television background, more storytelling background. So I came from over there, and now I've been working over there. And I'm trying to bring these two worlds together. And that's primarily what's at the heart of, I hope, my talk. It's about bringing these two worlds together, because I think there's something that actually can benefit from these two worlds. So I'm trying to find this happy medium, but I wrestle with this constantly on a daily basis. And there are these brief moments where I suddenly think I actually understand myself, and then I kind of write it down, and then it kind of just goes back out of my head again. So if you notice kind of waves of understanding, and you share the same thing, then don't worry, we're on the same page. Now, I also want to apologize in a way, because I did a talk, I actually filled in for Inga at the Berlinale a few weeks ago. They asked me to explain what I did, and I explained what I did, and then this German person put their hand up and said, as soon as I started talking, they said, I'm really sorry, I still don't understand what you do, which is horribly embarrassing. So I've probably got about sort of 20 or 30 slides that are going to tell you what I do, just to make sure that if there's one thing that you'll know by the time you leave here, it's what I do and nothing else. Yeah, I work at Kia. It's sort of a word from my sponsors, which is the Copenhagen School of Design and Technology, and I teach there, and I've been teaching there for the last 2 years. And one of the things we do is we've taken on a kind of an agency approach. I worked with a bunch of guys who all come from industry. We set up the course 2 years ago. We intentionally not trying to make it academic in any way, although we're probably supposed to. And we're focusing on trying to make students, degree students, ready for industry. And it focuses on these areas that, to be honest, I really didn't have any experience on. I suppose communication, you could argue I do, because I come from working in television. I love the speed. There's probably people at home watching this go past and thinking it's their internet connection slowing down, but it is actually the slides. This is in here in case you get to download the PowerPoint later so you can read more about it. But we focus on linking basically business, marketing, design, communication, and it runs over 3 semesters. And here's the beautiful building that we've just renovated, so come and visit us in Copenhagen if you fancy. My boss will be pleased if he's watching this. And these are my good-looking colleagues. All of them who've come from industry. None of them have actually been lecturers in the past, and that's intentional. But one of the things that happened was that as we were teaching this course, I was a bit sort of sitting in the background thinking, oh my God, I'm learning at the same level as the students are, and I also have to teach. And so what I did was took a position of trying to create a kind of a model and a frame to understand what it was that my colleagues were talking about. And I worked with my colleagues to develop this model, and that's what I'm going to share with you today. And what I've been doing more and more recently is to try and look at how this model could also work in ways of helping storytellers in terms of their pursuit to design interactivity. So we do a load of courses, a load of subject areas, and as I say, we work with clients as well. We get real clients, real people with real needs coming into our building and setting real tasks. And because we kind of work in a risk-free environment, we can really impress them, because we don't have to put bread on the table. And this is me. This is my background. I think I worked at the BBC. You can probably tell by the slightly large icon in the middle. Show off. But I worked there for 12 years. 8 of those years I worked in children's production, and I made children's programs. And I worked up through the ranks, and I was a studio director, so I'm back home. And I always used to work in theatre, so I'm even more back in home. I used to climb up and change these things. I also then ended up being a producer as well. And one of the things I produced that I was very proud of was a cross-media show called Bamzuki that I came up with in 1999. Kids building creatures on home computers and then racing them in a TV studio. You can watch all about that on YouTube if you want. But this word design, which is one part of my title, is an interesting term because I think, you know, when we often think about the word design, we often think about, it's all too easy to think of designer in terms of a designer chair or a designer teapot or something that looks beautiful but not very functional. But actually, I think now people are starting to realize that design is about developing things that actually, where there's a connection between form and function, where it actually has a relevance to the audience, to the user. And I clearly had a bit of a design mind when I was about 7. Because when I was 7, we used to have this toilet roll. It used to come in little boxes. It was this make, but it actually came in little boxes. And it was shiny. Now, I don't know about you, right? But to me, shiny toilet paper, okay, that's not good, right? I don't want toilet paper to polish. I want it to absorb, okay? So as a kid, I remember thinking, what is going on with these people who designed shiny it was like the stuff you put your mail pack in. I mean, anyway. So clearly I've had a kind of a design type brain since a child. It's only just recently that I've started learning some of the tools that relate to it. Back in 1999, when I used to go on various courses and seminars and learning about, what do we call it, multimedia then in those days, cross-media. By the way, these terms only come up to make sure that people like me can go off and do another talk. So whenever you hear these terms, cross-media, transmedia, nothing changes. It's just the lecture circuit helping itself, really. One of the things that we were very much encouraged to do as TV makers was to look at these people, game developers. Everybody was kind of looking towards game developers as if they held the key, because clearly they were dealing with interactivity. And that's great, that was cool, and it was very interesting. We kind of worked alongside each other and we tried to learn from each other's spaces. But what I've learned in the last 2 years is that there are actually a group of other people that I think we can learn a lot from if we want to design things that are interactive. And they are marketers and designers. And I hope by the end of this talk you'll maybe agree with me. Who knows? We'll see. I made this diagram because obviously every talk needs a good diagram. And I made this yesterday when it was very sunny outside. Because I hope that it conveys something that I think is at the heart of what we're trying to do. Storytelling, okay, books, TV, film, there is engagement. Of course there's engagement, but I believe it's what I would refer to as passive engagement. Unlike the cinema example you saw where the people were reacting to the screen, people tend not to do that. And as I was talking in the airport earlier about the project, we were talking very much about the conflict that we have with the audience has preconceptions about what happens in a cinema. You sit down, you watch a film, you don't say anything, you know. So there is engagement, but the engagement happens within us. It's kind of passive. We're engaged, but we don't necessarily do anything about it. But what we're trying to move into is this whole area of active engagement, where there is some kind of reaction on our part. We actually go and do something. We push a button, or we go and buy something, or what have you. And I think that shift is about shifting from storytelling into design thinking. Because that's what designers are particularly good at. Because designers, falling off the bottom of the screen here, they design products, they design services. So I have a mobile phone, I have an ATM machine, and of course, marketeers, they produce marketing. Google Adverts is a good example. So all these people, marketeers and designers, are dealing with active engagement. And what fascinates me is the tools that these people use which we can then steal in storytelling, or we can borrow, and we can then apply it to our own craft. So I think that there is this shift. And because I like analogies, I think that I think it's important to remember that if you're moving from passive to active engagement, it's not just simply about translating your story or transposing your story in some kind of way onto other platforms. It's not just, okay, so we have the story, how are we going to tell this story on the iPad or the internet or somebody's telephone or whatever. You actually, I think you have to go backwards. Because for me, you see, now Inga was talking about universes, and I have a slightly different term, but I think they're totally interlocked, which is theme. I think what you have to do is you have to go back to the theme, okay? So my analogy is that story is a bit like a baked bread, okay? Where it's been baked, it's been constrained in some ways, and you can't reverse engineer it. I don't know if anybody's ever tried it, but you can't go back to the dough, right? Good advice. Oh, that's one thing. What did you learn from that talk? Well, I learned that you can't reverse engineer bread. But the theme is the dough, okay? And as we know, we can use the dough in different ways. So it's a bit of a simplistic analogy, I know, but I think it's an important one because it reminds us that if we just dive into story and then think from that point outwards, then we're actually going to be very, very constrained. What we've got to do is we've got to go back to theme, okay? I'm just going to go back, actually, because I just remembered something. The important thing, and it's an important point I must make, is that story, the thing that some of you in this room are used to making, stories are themes that have been constrained by platform, media, and genre, okay? So when we make our films for cinema or for TV dramas or whatever, we are constraining these themes in such a way as to deliver the story that is relevant and appropriate for that platform, media, and genre. So as creatives, and I need to make this point because I'll rely on this point later on, so we all have to agree to this, is that we are actually, as creatives, we are used to being constrained in some kind of shape or form, okay, in order for us to deliver our stories. The thing is that we often do it really quickly. And the people who are extremely good at making stories or game shows or documentary series or whatever, people who are good at delivering products and offerings for platforms such as TV or books or cinema, what makes them so good is the fact that they can read a theme on a Sunday morning, let's say a headline in a newspaper, and they can come up with a format on the Monday morning just like that. So, for example, somebody might have read a story in the newspapers about how celebrity culture is, we're all becoming obsessed with celebrity culture, and all these pop idol-like shows are all fixed, and the celebrities are just, the judges are just voting on the wrong people, and we've been tricked as an audience or whatever. And then somebody will have seen that and thought, hey, I'll come up with a new format that actually makes it that the judges don't see the contestants. So we actually deal with the whole theme of kind of truth and justice and fairness and this kind of slightly anti-celebrity thing, but we'll frame it in a celebrity box. So they'll come up with a voice. I don't know if that's how the voice came out, by the way. And the thing is that for those professionals working in those spaces, they're so quick and they're so good at taking a theme and turning it into their output of choice, TV, game show, story, film, whatever, that they often don't see the divide between theme and output. They just see the two together. And I think that when you work with these people, the reason why they often get a little bit touchy and a bit irritated by your need to kind of to find ways of telling what they're trying to say but on other platforms is that they're already in their media and platform. They're already constrained and their head is in that space. They find it very difficult to go back to the dough because they're not used to being in the dough, because the thing that made them extremely good was the fact that they got out of the dough into the bread really quickly. So you're actually asking people to do the reverse of what they're actually really good at. And that's a real challenge. But the thing is that even if you've convinced somebody to go back to theme, And rather than jumping straight into the format that's relevant for their platform or media, but you've got them to actually stay in the theme, the next trick is to make sure they don't just ask the question, right, okay, so I understand the theme, I understand what it's all about, so we must make something for the iPad, or we must make something for the iPhone, or whatever. Because actually it might not be relevant to create something for the iPad, or it might not be relevant to create something for the iPhone in terms of what it is that you want to do with your theme. So again, it's about trying to get people to work, to go backstream, as it were, rather than to rush along down into the particular platform that they think that they need to produce for. And the way you do that is to try to get people to start asking questions rather than providing answers. And as creatives, we have this habit where we love to jump into answers very quickly rather than necessarily asking questions. And this is something that really struck me when I started working with design and marketing, was that good designers, really good designers, are very, very good at asking questions. They actually hold off the whole process of coming up with a solution. Whereas I think the tendency of people within our industry, within the area of filmmaking, TV making, story making, is that we dive headlong into providing answers. Because that's what we've been trained to do, and that's what we're extremely good at. So that's one of the, if there's one key thing, apart from the bread story, if there's one key thing that I think you need to come away with when thinking about designing for interactivity, is that you have to stay in the place of asking questions a lot longer. Okay? And actually, I think you have to do it in a more overt way. Because I think as creatives within more the maybe traditional media, television, film, stories, is that process of asking questions does definitely happen. And I know it happens. But it kind of happens inside the gut, yeah? Because it's often the gut that then drives the reason for why you do something, okay? Whereas I think, absolutely, we can still work on gut feeling, but we need to fill our bellies with insight. And that insight comes from asking questions. So what I want to do is, as I said, I want to talk about some of the tools that we use. And it's very, very broad overview, because blimey, if I could do it all now, then I wouldn't have to spend 20 weeks trying to teach students it. Although you're cleverer, obviously. But I want to just introduce you to some of the tools that we kind of use to get you seeing basically the kind of, at least the frame that we use to try and encourage our students to work out how to develop interactive, well, digital concepts for areas such as marketing and commerce and communication. You might know these two men. You might know at least one of them. I reckon it's probably the guy on the right, you know. Don Draper from Mad Men. This is an artist called Sean Scully. He's an Irishman living in Germany somewhere. So what we have here is we have an artist and we have a designer. And what I wanted to do was to try and just highlight again the difference between these two areas. And bear in mind, it's okay, I come from an area where I thought I was God. I worked in television, I made TV programs, I didn't really give much, no, oh God, people are watching on the internet. I did care about the audience, but probably not as much as I should have done. So I would probably have seen myself more as an artist than necessarily as a designer. So in a way, I think the artist is very much more about putting himself at the center of the scene, whereas I think the designer or the marketeer is about putting the user at the center of the scene, okay? And I think that this quote here from Sean Scully sums it up rather nicely. I shall read it for those at home. Something like art is a little like the donkey and the carrot, and the artist never reaches the carrot. You never get to nirvana. It's not possible because your concept, your ambition is always greater than what you are able to achieve. You are trying to, in a sense, trying to imitate God because you are trying to be creative. Very much about the self, about the pursuit of the self through art in terms of trying to understand the universe. Don Draper in Mad Men just says, this isn't art, Peggy, we're here to find solutions to other people's problems. I love it. I mean, it's so brilliant, you know. Forget us, it's about them. It's about solving a problem to a need. Now, this might feel a little bit of an extreme, and I'm certainly not just saying that, okay, give up anything that comes from within you and just go out there and find out what people want and give it to them, because they probably just want soft pornography and partial beheadings. So it's not, I'm totally not on the side of don't listen to yourself, just listen to your audience, because often the audience don't necessarily know what it is that they want. But that doesn't mean, therefore, that that kind of nth degree argument means that you can't then go and be inspired by the audience. So the interesting thing is that those two things might have felt slightly at odds with each other, sort of almost extremes. But I really think, and this is where my cake comes out of the oven now, so you can start putting your finger in it to see if there's wet sponge or not. So I feel like that as well when I see these slides. But I really think that there is actually something similar between these two spaces. Because I think in a way, if you look at something like a film, what I always call Saving Private Nemo, I always get it wrong, is that a film, actually at the heart of a film there's a theme, okay? And I would say, I'm sure there's clever people in the room who's probably got better ideas than me, but I would say one theme of Nemo is letting go and acceptance. And I would say that when you get a client coming in and asking you to do a campaign, a digital campaign for their new range of drink, there will actually be a kind of a theme there that you need to kind of understand in order to be able to place his goal in some kind of context. And the theme may well be the acceptance of a new type of drink, all right? And rather neatly, those two themes kind of resonate here because we're using the same word in both. But what the point I'm trying to make is that the thematic approach is something that is shared both by story makers and also people working in design and marketing. And I think that by identifying the theme, we reveal a goal, or at least we place some sort of goal in some kind of context. Because I think that we ask ourselves, you know, when we might come up with a brilliant idea about a film or whatever, but actually that idea, in terms of the plot or the narrative, actually does come from some underlying theme. It just may well be a little bit buried within us, or it may well be just some kind of universal truth that we all share and we've just accepted, and therefore we felt like we've jumped. It always feels like the plot or the story is the first point, but it's not actually. It's about 2 or 3 runs down the line. Deep within us, actually, we actually went through an internal process where we actually were inspired by some kind of theme. So it may well be that the goal then is to create a concept that explores the theme of letting go and acceptance. So that could be the underlying drive to deal with, make the film for Nemo. And of course, Carlsberg could come in and say, create a campaign that generates acceptance of a new type of drink. So it is actually about solving problems, because I think art is about solving problems. I really do. I think that art is about how do we understand the world. Design is about how can we sell more cider. All right? But at the end of the day, there are still problems to be solved. So this slide, I'm starting to feel, yeah, these two worlds that I come from are starting to get closer and closer. So if they're getting closer and closer, maybe then we can start using some of the tools that I've learned in the last 2 years that could actually then be relevant to this other world that I came from. So we developed this model with the inappropriately named KISH, which we've coined ourselves, and it comes from questioning, insight, solution, handover. And yes, I've never really applied it directly to storytelling, but I do believe, or very content-led offerings, we tend to use this model very much related to, as I say, marketing, design, commerce. But I do believe that there is something of value here that could be very useful when coming to consider the way by which you develop interactive propositions for your offerings. So what have we got here? We've got a client comes in and says, I need something, and then we then provide him with a solution. So this is the same client. He comes back again 3 weeks later. We give him a solution. And clearly for us, we want to define the goal of the client, and we want to then make sure that it fulfills their needs. But at the heart of this, I really believe there's a theme to the whole thing, and we realize that we have to stay within that theme. The case I said before was the acceptance of a new type of drink. We actually, when we work with our students, we call it the problem area. But I think it's the same thing as the theme. What's going up next? So you have these 4 lovely phases, and they all run from one to the other. But this is what I was talking about before. This whole questioning and insight phase is something that we as creatives, we go through on a kind of more gut feeling intuition base, all right? and it happens inside us, and sometimes it can happen unbelievably fast, and sometimes it can happen without us even realizing it's happening, okay? But what we do with our students definitely is we expose this process, and even when they hate it, we tell them, stop coming up with ideas, start coming up with questions. Because we make sure that when they come up with a solution, they can't come up with a single solution until they've gathered some insight. And the students find that particularly tough. In fact, actually, when we're working with this with our students, they have to do this within the first week and a half, and then they have to deliver a report, and then they start working on this. And if we hear them working on their solutions right at the beginning, we say, that's great, just stick it in your back pocket, and then bring it out in a week and a half's time. And then you can test it. You've got something to test it against. So this questioning phase, and I've kind of got a light touch here in terms of the way we describe it, is it's very much about defining the goal, which might be an internal goal. It might not necessarily be coming from a third party, but it could be coming from yourself. And really clarify your theme, and then start gathering your questions. And I think this is the most crucial part, and it's a very, very creative part. It's the point where you say to yourself, what is it that I need to know more of about my audience in order to be able to deliver something to them that is going to be most relevant to them in relation to my theme and my goal? Okay? So we define our goal, we swim around the theme to get a real sense of what this theme is about, and then we ask ourselves, what do we want to know? What would we love to know? And I'll give you some examples of this in a sec. And what happens is that questioning, by really defining some really cool questions, ideally with the word identify at the beginning, really open questions to say things like, how does the audience, who is our target group? Oh, there's a question that filmmakers don't like. Target group, it's for everybody. You know, who is our target, or it's for me. Who is our target group? Who are they? What do they want? What are they interested in? How do they consume media? What platforms are they on? When do they go to the cinema? When don't they go to the cinema? Do they have access to iPods, iPhones, smartphones? What do they use on those devices? How do they use them? Loads and loads of questions. And it's a very creative process, and it's a very research-intensive process, so you try to outsource it to somebody else who's cleverer than you. But it is still a process that is very, very useful because it will give you insight, fantastic insight. So then what we do is, once we've got our questions, we then move into the insight phase. And what we do is we start analysing. And I'm not going to go into here, but there are a whole load of tools that you can use within marketing that you can use to kind of address each of these different questions. And what you do is you have to be very strategic about the type of tools that you use at particular times. It might be tools about how do you find out about the competition? How do you find out about the legal issues or the social issues, how society is changing, how the environmental impact views political issues, lots and lots of different issues that will all in some ways have some impact on your solution. So what you do is you go through a process of analysing, and you basically try to answer all those questions that you had at the beginning. And the interesting thing is you still are no closer to your solution, which is a really tough thing, particularly for creative people. They're like, but I want to be in the solution. But what you have to do is you have to stay more within a questioning phase. So you deconstruct, you look up, you research, you go out and ask people, you go and view people, you watch people, you sit in the street. You ask people clever questions. You ask people stupid questions. You just go and absorb. You know, the danger is often when you hear very, very clever people, I don't know, Steve Jobs, or he's dead, isn't he? Or if you hear, or if you hear people like a clever architect, okay, talking about how it is that they came up with a particular idea for a particular thing. If you take an architect down the street and you show him a big hole between two buildings, he'll suddenly just dream up some incredible glass metal structure that will fill the space. And the danger is that when you're with somebody like that, you think automatically, wow, they've just jumped into their solution. But what they've done actually, they've used years of insight that they've built up within them, and they've just processed it unbelievably quickly. And the problem, I think, with our students, being slightly younger and less experienced, is that they see that, and they see that as a model for jumping into the solution. And we have to say, no, 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 you can't do that because you haven't got 50 years of experience. I think Malcolm Gladwell, who wrote The Tipping Point, talked about the 10,000 hours. You know, you need to do 10,000 hours of something to become an expert. So in a way, this process of gathering insight is about you accumulating this knowledge. It's about you accumulating your 10,000 hours. You don't need to spend 10,000 hours on every project, by the way. So what happens is the insight that you gather defines some parameters that shape your solution, and they inspire your solution. And again, it's interesting because I always say parameterize instead of constrain, because I can always see creative people thinking, oh, I don't like the word, I don't want to be constrained. But in actual fact, constraint is it makes people most creative. The most creative people are people on desert islands, prisoners, and men on ships, okay? Because they're creative because, you know, there's little bottles with those little boats inside, you know, that have been made by sailors because they're bored, and they've made it out of their mate's teeth or something. They've been creative because they are so constrained. When a child comes up to you and says, I'm bored, the worst thing you can say is, well, go and do anything. Well, that's why I'm bored. I don't know what to do. But if you say, right, what I want you to do is I want you to draw a picture, and I want you to draw a picture of an elephant inside a car going over a bridge. Suddenly you've given them constraints, and oh, okay, I'll go and do that. Don't do that now, by the way, if you're bored. So in a way, what you're doing is you're gathering insight from your audience, from your target group, in order, in some ways, to shape your solution. So here's an example, and I come on to the example in a sec. I've kind of done this the wrong way around. ATM machines, I think we've all used them here, I'm sure. Invented, I don't know, 30, 40 years ago or something. You'll love this, especially the Swedes amongst you. Supposedly, the reason why it has 4 numbers for an ATM machine is because the Scottish guy that invented it thought that was the maximum number of digits that his wife would be able to remember. But anyway, so cancelling that holiday to Scotland now, aren't you? So basically, all these parameters are all bits of insight that you might have gathered about your audience if you were designing an ATM machine. Imagine you lived in a world where there were no ATM machines and a bank came to you and said, we need something to give money to our customers when we've gone home at night, because it's a bit of a pain. A lot of people like to spend money when the banks are closed. So you think, right, well, what could that be? I don't know. Well, rather than just looking inside yourself, you'd go out and you'd find out loads of insight. And all that insight, basically, would then give you parameters that would then define the space where your solution is. You still don't know what the solution is. But if then one of your mates later on in the pub says, hey, why don't we come up with this incredible thing? It's like an elephant that hangs in the sky, and you phone it up and it drops money on your head, you might go, brilliant, but hold on a sec. Is it free and cheap? Oh, bugger, no, it's not. You're going to have to pay for it. Oh, right, it's out. So in a way, what this insight does is it starts giving you a kind of a test guide to be able to see whether or not your solution will actually fit. So, taking the ATM machine, okay, I'll whiz through this. Oh my God. Right. You have a client, okay, comes along with some sort of goal. The client sits within, there is a theme behind it. I mean, theme within this instant would be about the availability of money, let's say, okay? The theme is availability of money. Banks want to tap into the notion that people like spending money and we want to make money available because so there's this growing need for money. Sorry, I should have written this out better. These are the questions that you formulate in order to find out some analysis, to get some answers, to create some kind of conclusion to then drive your solution. And I'll just give you some quick whiz through this. Bank needs some kind of, let me go back, don't read too much. Bank needs a solution to enable customers to access money. So you say to yourself, right, well, we need to identify who are the users. We need to understand their needs. We need to understand the locations. We need to understand how much do people want to withdraw. We want to understand, are there any issues around safety, let's say, security? What are the user habits of people spending money? We want to understand what are the bank operational habits. There's loads of stuff I don't know, and I need to go and find out. I go off and I analyze, and I do questionnaires, and I talk to people, and I come back and I realize that bank customers want money outside opening hours, but it's expensive. And it's insecure to man banks 24/7. Customers spend money at night, they use cash and don't like to carry lots of it around. So I summarize from that people need some kind of free, cheap, safe, available, 24/7, easily accountable, trustworthy way to get their money. I still don't know what the solution is, but I know that whatever the solution is, it has to fulfill all those things. So I then come up one night, cleverly, with an ATM machine. And then I test it against these things to see if it works. So what this does is it kind of reminds you that, or I think it's just a different approach to the way by which we are creative. And it kind of forces the questioning phase out more into the open. And it reveals it more, and it forces us to be more transparent in the way that we ask questions about the kind of the outcome of what we're trying to achieve before we've even got to the solution. So that in some ways it creates some parameters, some constraints under which we can work. Because I think most of that process, particularly if you come from film or from TV, it's a very buried activity. It's an activity that tends to happen deep within inside us. And I've noticed that working with designers and marketeers, that process is much more transparent, it's much more on the table. So, yeah, we have this phase, and then of course you can then move into a solution phase, and you start coming up with ideas, idea generation, you use all sorts of tools. One of the best tools I know is reverse brainstorming, fantastic. You've all done brainstorming, we've all talked about the rules of brainstorming, we all know brainstorming, but reverse brainstorming is brilliant because what you do is you do the opposite of what you're supposed to do. You think evil. So if the bank let's say a Netto's supermarket, they want you to improve the shopping experience for customers. If you give that to people to think about in terms of coming up with good solutions, they'll just go crazy, blue skies, totally useless stuff. But if you ask them to do the opposite, how can we ruin the experience for shoppers? When people start to think evil, they're precise. We'll take a wheel off the trolley. Okay, we'll make sure that the aisles are really narrow and you can't get 2 trolleys down it. Okay, we'll make sure all the good stuff's really high and we won't price it. And then we've got loads of sweets down by the kiosk. Oh, they do that anyway. But so what? And then what you do is you take all that and then you flip it on its head, and you say, okay, well, we'll make sure the trolley works really, really well. We'll make sure the alleyways are really wide so you can get more than 2 trolleys down. We'll make sure that all the stuff that you want is actually really easy to access, and we'll make sure it's really clearly priced. So it's a really interesting process. So it's just one tool of many tools that you can use to generate ideas. But the neat thing is that if you've done all your insight before and you've gathered all those parameters, when you do come up with these crazy ideas, you can do that against your insight. And you could do it against your insight in the context of your goal. So for example, if with the bank manager thing, I'm thinking on my feet here, if they've asked you to come up with some sort of device to give money, and you found out that people want something, in order to get money, they want something that's kind of in places that are feel secure and are public. If you did a reverse brainstorming on that, you'd say, right, let's put it in a really dark alley out in the back of some industrial estate where nobody ever goes at night, and make sure it's really dark. So what you do is you start doing your creative thinking, your solution type thinking, right on top of your insight. And then you'd actually start coming up with stuff. And this goes back to the point I was trying to make earlier, which is don't just sit there and think, right, I've got my theme, right, what we're going to do on the iPod. iPod, what's that? iPad, maybe. What we're going to do on the iPhone. Don't just, it's more about saying, well, actually, if you suddenly found out in your analysis that maybe people aren't using a particular device or platform, well, then don't use it, don't target it. Okay, so you go through some sort of creative thinking process. You go through a process of selection. Things like De Bono's hats is a clever tool, if you know De Bono's hats, as a way of weeding out some of the crappy ideas and to being critical. Work them out, evaluate them, go out there, test them, go and check what your users, your potential audience are going to think about it. Test, 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 test. I hated it. I developed this show, as I said, for the BBC, and when I look back at what I did, it was awful because I just didn't want to go out there and test it with the audience because I really thought that I knew best. And I made loads of mistakes, you know. And then you define your solution, and then what we then do is we make a big distinction between the solution phase and the handover phase. And what you'd recognise, you'd call it the pitching phase. Okay, the point at which you're then pitching it to commissioner. Because we don't pitch our solution, we pitch the benefits. And this is something which you can do a whole workshop on, which is the whole process by which you actually then go into this handover phase and you find a way by which you actually then deliver this back to the client. and you make sure that it actually works against their needs, and it's about assessing their needs. And you pitch it, and you give them some materials, and then you try and find out if it works for them. So, with 4 minutes to go. So don't worry, that's all right. It's only in the PowerPoint if you end up downloading it. I don't know if we're going to make them available. I presume we are. But it's basically just a little bit more detail of this crazy KISS model that we've developed in the last 2 years back at Kia. And I wanted to make sure that I brought it back, of course, to kids. Because what I've just talked about there is kind of very general and very broad. And obviously, I hope applies to a whole range of target groups. It doesn't. Does not specifically for children, but clearly we can use it in relation to designing interactivity for children. But I thought I'd just steal some slides from another talk that I once did about engaging, how do you design interactivity on an engagement level for children. And I just thought there's some interesting things in here I just wanted to share with you in the last few minutes, which is about what motivates children. Okay, unfortunately I don't have time to show you the examples, but that's absolutely fine. I think there are certain themes that are particularly relevant for children, for young children. Okay, and when we say children, I'm probably, well, it changes, but there are particular age groups that I think that's particularly pertinent for. Ownership is key. Okay, I heard a very interesting thing last week at BUF in Malmö, which was this idea that children, boys between the age of 6 and 8, suddenly see the dangers of the world. They suddenly realise that the world is a dangerous place and they need to protect themselves and maybe those around them. And that's why they collect things, because it's a kind of internal need to collect and collect. That's why boys at the age of 6 or 7 just start collecting football cards or sticks or whatever. It's this kind of sort of primeval need to protect themselves against this big bad world. And we know that ownership is a real core thing of childhood. So that as a theme is something that clearly one can build on and we can be inspired by that. But again, I wouldn't jump from ownership straight into your solution. I would then go out and challenge this theme and go and explore this theme with the target group and try to understand more about it. Because it may well be that actually the way by which you explore ownership as a theme on television could be vastly different from the way by which you explore it on the iPad or on the internet. And the thing that connects them is a brand and the theme, but it might not be the stories that you tell. You might tell vastly different stories. Acknowledgement and taking part. That's another crucial thing that some children are particularly influenced by. This need to feel that they are being acknowledged in some kind of way and that they are able to contribute in some kind of way. Making sense of the world. What's it called now? Damn. There are actually links on this PowerPoint, which you can have, to some of the videos that relate to this. It's a very, very beautiful piece made by a friend of mine at the BBC. The Wrong Trainers, that's it. Beautiful. All about taking interviews with children who've gone through some pretty tough times and animating the outcome, but using the children's audio. A bit like Creature Comforts did with Aardman with the thing 20 years ago or something. But this is beautiful. But kids want to make sense of the world. We all want to make sense of the world, right? But kids in particular want to make sense of the world. And I think that's a real core theme for children. Newton's third law of motion, that's a really important thing for kids. The notion, the idea that for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. Cartoons, basically. You know, when Tom bashes Jerry over the head, then he gets hit back and dum, dum, dum. You know, there is this feeling of action and reaction. And kids love that. Also, this whole thing about funativity. There's a lovely, lovely article. I think there's an article. Yeah, I've got a link to it by a guy called Noah Fulstein, who wrote this fantastic article about funativity. He talks all about why is it that we play games, what is it that drives us to play games, and the notion somehow that at the deep core reason of why we play games is because it's an evolutionary aspect within us to become better at doing things like hunting. The person who was particularly good at just practicing throwing a rock at a stone became the better spearsman and maybe killed more animals and then lived a bit longer, gave more children, And he believes that this has kind of come through in the process and that actually the funativity aspect of games is absolutely crucial and that's a very, very primal component. Gary Pope, who some of you might have heard before, outspoken Englishman, runs Kids Industries, taught me about a thing called the zone of proximal development, which is a really interesting thing, this notion of a space between understanding something and not quite understanding something. And it's this kind of middle ground where you're kind of confident of kind of thinking you've got it, a bit like me doing this talk, but you're not quite there. And the good example is the child that's learning to walk between two parents. It's the point where they kind of let go and they kind of walk and then they grab. And this is where development and learning happens most, is in that space. And it's a space where you need to create enough challenges for a child in an interactive space, but you don't get to the point where it becomes frustrating. It's just in the middle somewhere, because that encourages you to go on. And I also heard, which is not in this slide, but I think it's a really, really interesting thing, some recent study that said, that basically talked about the notion that children are actually more incentivized by random reward than a kind of binary reward system. The idea that when you get something right, you get a point. If you get it wrong, you don't. They actually found that gaming culture is teaching children that often you just get rewards kind of randomly. Like Mario running along and then suddenly just gets a load of gold coins. And they demonstrated this with children doing games where, maybe I can't go into it, too complicated, but just believe me. Okay, being creative. It took me about 8 years to realize what the central theme of Bamzuki was that I made for the BBC, which was that children like being creative and like to show off. And it took me ages to realize that that was what the whole thing was about. Because I, in some ways, kind of jumped into the solution really quickly and hadn't really explored the theme, because the theme was deep inside me. But I do believe that children do like to be creative and they like to show off. Strangely enough, children also like friendship. If you've ever seen this film, Big, with Tom Hanks, there's a wonderful moment in that film, which I'd love to show you, but I can't, which just captures this whole aspect of what friendship. And another film, Stand By Me. Oh my God, if you want to understand kids, go, just watch it. That is so much captures what friendship is about, particularly about, the friendship between young boys. Funnily enough, they like to be entertained. We know that because they like to watch this drivel. And as we're discovering more and more, kids like to communicate. But I think we have to be really careful about what we mean by communicate, because I don't believe that particularly kind of pre-tweens, sort of children up to about 9 or 10, I don't believe that they necessarily want to communicate on the way that we think they communicate through social networks. That happens much later. I think it's more connected with adolescence and the way that children communicate as a function of their sexuality and of adolescence, rather than just the need to communicate. Boys, they don't talk to each other, they talk through things. Get two boys in a room at the age of like 7 or 8, they are not going to sit there like over a latte having a chat. They'll just play with something and the dialogue will come through the playing of something. I'm whizzing through this because I'm conscious I think I've just run over time. Wanting to grow up, that's another aspect of children, that's very important. There's a link to this, just watch it, it's brilliant, all about the notion that children can never be late. And there's also a link to this, which is about iterative thinking and the way that children, very young children, are the best designers in the world. Why? Because they try stuff out and they try stuff out and they try stuff out. Whereas adults, we want to plan everything completely and then watch it fail at the end. Very quickly, in about 30 seconds, one of the things I'm going to be doing, I think, with some of you guys tomorrow is using a tool that I use to actually help you through the creative process. It's a way of mapping. I can see somebody smiling here who's gone through that process. Was it useful for you? Okay, good. It's Lego. Basically, I use Lego as a tool and a kind of a therapeutic tool to work with teams of people to be able to kind of vomit up their ideas onto tables. Because one of the things I found, particularly with cross-media, transmedia, is that they're very complex, these ideas, hugely complex. And the problem is when you're sitting in a room with somebody with a bigger brain than yours and they explain their fantastic idea, you use 90% of your energy constructing the model in your head, and you use about 10% of your energy trying to be creative on top. And then if somebody else in the room adds to that idea, you're screwed. So what I do is I kind of slow everybody down and say, right, we're going to map it on the table with Lego. And we map it on the table, and it just basically allows everybody to go, oh, thank God for that. I can now use 90% of my brain in being creative and 10% to get the coffee. And the idea is now in front of us. And it's a really, I find it a very, very useful tool. And well, we'll see what happens tomorrow. You know what? And I think that's about it. I think I've just gone over, but I do apologise. So there you go. There's some stuff for you. I hope that it's relevant, and I hope that you can get something from it and be inspired, particularly by the fact that there are actually people out there, particularly within design thinking, who I think have got some pretty cool tools that we as storytellers could actually use and benefit from when designing interactivity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Now we have a couple of minutes for questions from the audience here in the room. They are overwhelmed. Now I don't remember the name of it, but you were talking about the tool that you can use. I think it was in the phase of the second. Yeah, in the case, it was in the second part.
Okay, so it's questioning insight.
Yeah, in the insight part. You talked about a tool that you called something. It wasn't.
Well, we talked about reverse brainstorming in the solution part.
Yeah, but another. No.
Well, that's okay.
There's like no proper question coming out, but you were like, yeah, you're probably familiar with that one. It was called maybe like 3 words, like maybe a name.
I can't remember. Anybody else remember? I can't remember. But there are, the thing about that insight phase, there are a huge load of tools that you could use.
Could you give maybe some specific
Yeah,
example?
you could use, there's a thing called, my God, there's Porter's 5 Forces, which is basically a tool which basically allows you to map out all the different competitive rivalry within a market. So you can look at, who are the competition, what are the competitive products, what are the substitute products. And as I said to the students, these models are no cleverer than a food rack in Netto. It's basically, it's just a checklist. It's just a way of taking information and just categorizing it in clever, in neat, simple ways. Because I think a lot of the time, students often get very scared by these models and think they're kind of given by God. It's just that some bloke with a beard before them managed to just arrange information in a clever way and create a kind of checklist. So there are a load of things. PEST, for example, is a political, economic, social, technological, legal, environmental. They're all kind of areas that you need to look into when being able to try to ask questions about whatever it is you're doing. So, for example, Carlsberg comes to you and says, right, we want to release a new organic plum wine. You might say to yourself, well, let's look to the checklist. Oh, look, it says legal. Oh, maybe there's some legal considerations we need to think about. Maybe there's some societal considerations. Maybe there's some political things. So they're just checklists to kind of kickstart your brain into asking questions. And the good thing about this is, again, it's all about questions. And to remember that actually the questioning phase is a hugely creative phase, when most people think, hey, no, the creative phase is when you just get down and start doing it, sitting late at night and tapping away.
And could you recommend a site with the links or somewhere to find
Well, funny
these
enough, actually, I
tools?
do actually, in my PowerPoint here, in one of the slides, there are a load of tools that are in there, just as some examples. I mean, you guys have probably all used SWOT before, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. And that's a really good tool that we use at the end of the process to kind of gather up all the information from all the other tools. As I said, it's kind of, I just didn't want to go too much into depth with all these different tools because I think it would freak your head up. Maybe that's the next talk you can invite me back to. So, yeah.
Maybe. There's one question from the audience. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just curious to find out a little bit about, when we work with transmedia concept, they can be quite complex. And when you get to the final phase of presenting something very short and brief, you were mentioning providing the benefits. But what would you say, could you give us some ideas on a good way of presenting very complex material?
Totally. What you do is, when you go and, before you go to a pitch, the danger is often is that we just map out what our needs are. So we sit there and think, right, what do we need to get across? Oh, we need to get this. Oh, yeah, John had a really good idea in the pub. We'll get that. We'll mention this. Now, that's okay. Write all that stuff down. But then map out what are the needs of the person you're pitching it to. So say to yourself, well, okay, this is a commissioner for SVT. Well, what area are they in? What do they need? What is it that they really need? So map out all their needs. And then say, well, hold on. Who are they representing? They're representing at least 2 people. They're representing their boss, which is kind of summed up in SVT. Ideally, it's one of the same, but we all know that commissioners don't always represent exactly what their umbrella organisation wants. But they are also representing the user. So in a way, what you're doing is if you map out both SVT's needs, the needs of the user, and the needs of the commissioner, get all these needs mapped out, get all your needs mapped out, and then kind of use it as a checklist to make sure that you are ticking off all these different needs. Because I think one of the key things about pitching is to understand who you're pitching to. I learned a lot when I was pitching Bamzuki in the States, and it was a really complex project, and I think I did a bit of a bad job sometimes, and I hopefully got better. But one of the things I really noticed was there's a really good question you can ask when you're going around pitching, because if you're pitching 3 or 4 times a day to different broadcasters, you need to ask the question, what are you looking for right now, okay? Because when they say, well, you know what, and it's like you've just been to Discovery, very earthy, very, good, wholesome stuff. You're now pitching to Cartoon Network, and they say, well, we're not looking for any of that sort of entertainment kind of stuff. We want, just fun, fun, fun. And then your brain's going, ha, 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 and you're twisting all those words that you just used at Discovery to turn into the kind of fun words that are relevant to that commissioner. So I think, ironically, a lot of this talk has been about the target audience, and I think you can apply that totally to when you're going to pitch. You need to sit down, you need to map out what are their needs. And then when you work out their needs, it makes it much simpler. Because when you go to pitch, your pitch is not giving them an instruction guide as to how to make your project. Your pitch is about making sure they've got enough material so that they can pitch it to somebody else. You don't need them to make sure that they can do it themselves. And there are 2 parts to a pitch. You're pitching the product and you're pitching yourself. As Jared Lasseter said from Pixar, you can give a really good idea to a mediocre team and they'll ruin it. You can give a mediocre idea to a good team and they'll make a brilliant job out of it. So when you're pitching, it's not just about pitching your project, it's actually about pitching yourselves as a team capable of delivering what it is they want.
Yeah, I hate to do this, but we have to wrap this up. And after the next and last presentation, maybe you'll be around for a while and people can talk to you here in the audience. Definitely. Thank you for a great talk. Okay, so now we're just going to take a couple of minutes break. Okay, now let's move on to the last part of today's seminar. And as always, you have to say the last but not the least. With me here, I have a PhD student, researcher Simon Alexanderson from the Royal Institute of Technology, KTH, here in Stockholm. And his brother, actor Filip Alexanderson from the Royal Dramatic Theatre, Dramaten. And they are here to tell us about a project that they made together, which is also about motion capture technology for kids. Please go ahead, let's give them a big welcome.
Okay, I'm going to tell you about, or we are going to tell you about 2 different projects involving live animation. And first I'm going to talk about a digital puppetry workshops for children, and then Filip is going to talk about a live animation on stage project that we're just starting up. So first I'm going to give you some structure of the talk. So why digital puppetry? And then I'm going to give an overview of the workshops, and I'm going to tell you about the results and some conclusions and some future plans. So coming to why digital puppetry. So children in all cultures have used dolls, puppets, and action figures to tell stories. And that's something very, very natural to them. But in kind of digital worlds and games, they're kind of more consumers of entertainment and media. So the question is, can the playfulness and directness of this of playing with puppets be transferred into this digital worlds? And can we guide the kids to become producers of cultural values instead of just consumers? And can we also find a way for even small kids to make 3D animated films, which they are very interested in, but it's very, very hard to make and cumbersome to make animated films. So the workshops. So last fall we held a series of digital puppetry workshops in a newly opened kids cultural center called the Palace here in Stockholm. And as I said, we were using motion capture technology to drive the virtual characters in real time. And we're using a home-developed technical platform. And it was also in collaboration with a puppeteering company here in Stockholm called Dockteaterkollektivet. So the overview of the workshops. So it was led by the puppeteer from Dockteaterkollektivet, and we had roles for 5 kids at a time. But the audience was also very active in these sessions. And it took about 30 to 40 minutes, and we did casting of the roles, story creation together, rehearsals, recording, and the screening of the final film that they made. So the setting of this world. So it's set in a newscast from the monster world. And we had 3 different scenes, the newsroom, an alien invasion scene, and kind of a haunted house scene. And the roles were the news anchor, 2 different reporters. You can see them there in the middle, like a girl, and some kind of alien figure. And then we had the UFOs and some ghosts, which could also shoot lasers or lightning bolts and interact with the environment by pushing on the houses in the scene so they fell down and stuff like that. And the technical setup, I'm going to show you a little bit here on this movie. Det är bra.
Har vi ställt in kameran på hjälmen, så gör jag sådär. Så kan vi lite grann se hur ni kan röra den petade framför oss. Och nu såg ni här att det kommer det är nog björnen här som är på väg. Har vi pistol här? De är här i köttfärs. Och Peter Sanders har just nu lite morgongympa. Alldeles strax kan börja rapportera och vad man ska göra och vad man ser.
And then some clips from the films that the children's made. Okay, let's turn this down. We'll show some videos. Unfortunately, or everything is in Swedish, so.
Ja, hej och välkomna till Monsternytt.
Välkommen till Monsternytt.
2 hus har vält av mystisk anledning.
Vi har nu sett ett spöke som gör lite headspin. Bra jobbat spöket, du får en 5 av 10 av mig.
Medan det här händer så snodde Fläckan all läppstift för hon ville vara exakt helt rosa.
Bengtsson, du får inte släppa ut en katt igen. Idag så är det en galen man som har gått på promenad. Han snodde kex. Kameran går. Ja, det var jättekonstigt. Jag skulle gå till affären så här och sen så bara välte ett hus och jag bor ju där borta i det där rosa huset och hoppas att inte det välte, för det är ju liksom mitt hus och så. Så att, ja.
Ja, som ni kan se går det ganska bra här för de här små utomjordingarna.
Hjärnsläpp.
Ja, inget händer här vad jag kan se.
Jo! Det är ett UFO! Hjälp! Vet du vad det är dags för?
Väck mig inte!
Jo!
Varför det?
För det är dags för en speciell sak!
Vadå då? Din födelsedag eller vadå?
Nej, den årliga spökdansen!
Okay, so back to some conclusions. Was the playfulness and directness of puppeteering transferred into the digital media? And I think the answer to that must be yes. It was really easy to get the kids going and their imagination and creativity going. And the animation tools were really intuitive and fun to use. And each workshop provided new stories or generated new stories. And we also saw no problems with even older kids interacting with younger or any gender problems. And we also saw some interesting things. We changed the setup from being like closed room workshops to more interactive jam sessions where kids just could come in and join in. And that was really good approach because they got very good feedback from the audience, and the kids in the audience could just sit and see what roles that they were prepared to take on in the next run. So in conclusion, the workshops were really a success, and they were top rated among the Palace activities. And I think that there is a great potential for digital puppetry to become a platform for storytelling for kids. And the future plans, we're looking for new venues and arenas to run these workshops. And we're also working with some new types of digital puppets and scenes, like we're doing Muppets and like finger puppets that you just can walk with your hands like this, and of course full body motion capture is also we're looking into, and then a bunraku type of puppet which is really detailed. So also here's some thanks. And then Filip will talk about the next project.
Yeah. So my name is Filip Alexanderson, and I'm an actor at the Royal Dramatic Theatre here in Stockholm. It's the non-coughing theatre that you heard about, the dusty theatre. That's where I work. So I was actually a student here, and I graduated 8 years ago. But now I'm back to the crime scene. So. I will tell you a bit, because when Simon told me about this technique that he was developing, I got very interested, of course, because what I found out is that it's really close to the essence of theater. So if you come to the question, what is theater? Theater is something that occurs right in front of you on the stage, or it could be anywhere, but it appears in front of your eyes. It's in the present, here and now. And with this technique, you can actually take a digital world and make it live, and that corresponds a lot to the theater theme. So I got very excited by this and thought, how can we play with this technique, and how can we make it come together? So we started this project that is called Digital Presence, Digital Närvaro. We're doing a series of workshops, because what I find that you could do with this technique is that, as we saw in the cinema Dell'Arte, is you can have different kind of costumes, of course. You can have a person. We want to take this to the stage and make projections with this digital world, and see how these worlds interact. So you can actually walk from a physical me. You can walk into a digital me, or you can see an avatar of me, of the actors. You can see the avatars projected on some point on the stage. And of course, that is very interesting. You can look very different, and you can also be in places that you can't be on stage, because on stage we're relying on physics. You know, we can't fly. We have to use wires or use the imagination. But in the digital world, we can fly, or we can go to the moon, or we can dive into the sea. We can do whatever we want to do, and we won't lose this now, this here and now, this presence. So we're doing this a series of workshops. We're not doing a show in the end to just, you know, doing Hamlet in this way. Probably, or hopefully, in the end we'll come there. But this project is all about workshops. So during this year, we're doing a series of workshops where we have invited people from the theater world here in Sweden to just explore this technique. So for instance, later this week we'll do our first workshop, and it's about what can these digital puppets express? What are their limits? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? And so we're going to work with puppeteers and dancers, mime actors, and just explore and actors, yeah. So that's the first part. And the second part is we're working with theater directors. That's gonna just to explore the thing with reality, with the actors in real, and it could be both time projected and the things that I was talking about. That's the second part. The third part is a project, it's a workshop with a movie. It's a bit like Cinema Dell'Arte, of course, but in this world you have a 3D camera that it's like an invisible cameraman that can go very agile. You can go inside or to do close-ups, and the camera can go out, and you can cut scenes. You can do live cutting, live editing, and that's of course that's knowledge that film directors have. So we want to work with film directors to explore this technique as well. And then the last part is that we in December we're doing like a summary. We're taking all this experience that we're hopefully going to gain on this workshop series, and we're putting it together like a trailer on the dramatic theater. And just to show people this could be a part of what it could look like, just small parts of it. So basically that's this new project that we're entering. And it's me and Simon and a puppeteer and actor called Henrik Bäckbro. And we have a core with a theater director called Ellen Lam and a stage setting group, stage and light designing group called Sutoda. So we're forming a core in this project. So that's it. I think that's our presentation. So please, if you have any questions.
So let's see. Do we have there? Wait, Paul wants to ask a question. Maybe you can wait for the mic. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I want to ask a question for the first part. What kind of response have you had from children watching the output who weren't involved in the creation? Have you had any children watching like the clip that you saw us, that showed us, that weren't actually involved in it? I'm just kind of interested to see what kind of reaction you got from them.
No, we actually didn't have that scenario, unfortunately. So I can't really give you a good answer. But I think like my impression is that it was really fun making the movies and watching them afterwards. Like you could always see all the flaws in them, but you could still kind of feel the playfulness in the creation, but kind of it's not very polished, the output.
But it may well be that that's something that other children really enjoy in it, and that's kind of, I was just curious to hear. But
yeah.
If
I'm
you do
curious
it, you let me know.
So I'll show it to other kids. Like I've got hours of movies.
I'll come around.
Yeah.
So what I think you mentioned, but what was the target age group for the children's in the workshop?
Like 8 to 12, I would say. Or it was actually 8 to 18, but mostly it was children aged 8 to maybe 12 or 14 or 15. But like even, you know, teenagers, like this teenage black rock guys came in and they were like having really fun with it. So yeah.
So for everyone in a way. Yeah, there we have one more question from Inga.
I think your project sounds very interesting, bringing together all these different disciplines to kind of see how the experiment unfolds on stage. But with my experience of bringing together different disciplines, who's going to moderate that? I mean, who's going to take your creative divas through this collision?
Well, we're brothers, you know.
Okay.
We're already fighting, so.
No, but when you have dancers, mime artists, directors.
The series of workshops that you're planning. It sounds fascinating, but it's just I can already feel the collision happening on stage.
But actually, we're not aiming for a goal. That's a good thing for us, because we're just experimenting, and we just actually, like these children, we just want to play with this technique, and so we're not aiming for.
Or?
I don't know, just to play with it. Actually, for me, it's a studio to play with, and hopefully the people around us will just have to explore and not be able to say we came up with this goal. We came up to let's show this on the YouTube, or it's not. So I don't actually think that it will be a big problem yet. But when we're going for this. If you're going for a goal with a big stage, say you do the Tempest by Shakespeare, and you have a movie director and you have a stage director, and yeah, that could be a really problem. But it could really be a big. It could get a creative boom of it as well. So hopefully we'll see in a couple of years maybe.
Thank you. This sounds like a really fun project, and I think you've sort of answered part of my question, because because the model is more about exploring and sort of just seeing what happens. I was just thinking, have you guys considered themes? And I think you've sort of led into that. But what came to my mind was the theater of the oppressed, where there's, where schools use it as a tool to talk about issues of, let's say, racism or of oppression or these sort of, much more weightier themes, but much for much older sort of, maybe high school children or something like that. Have you guys thought about that? Or?
We haven't actually. This project is not. This project was for kids, and this project is not especially for kids. It's for the technique, and it's more for It's more for people working with theater, and since I'm an actor, I'm not a director. And hopefully we'll have directors that thinks that, oh, this is really interesting. I want to show them Hamlet in this mix, in this way. That hopefully they will get themes, because this is actually, it's more like a. We think that this is more like a technique show that. Before you had stage lighting, you couldn't do things, but then someone invented stage lighting. And this is hopefully a thing like that before you couldn't go into digital worlds, and in the future maybe that will be very common, but we're not the people saying exactly how to make it, just showing the technique.
What's possible.
Yeah. So hopefully the themes will be very the fantasy. I think the Tempest is a good one, or I don't know, the Dream Play of Strindberg, or and of course for children doing all these kind of storytelling, ordinary stories, and well, the sky's the limit. I don't know.
So we have time for one more question. Yes, Inga, there's... Wait, could you wait for the mic? For the people watching online.
What inspired you to create that workshop for kids? I mean, why did you go out to do that?
I was introduced to digital puppetry like maybe 4 years or 5 years ago or so by an old colleague, and I was immediately like interested in that field, and these workshops seemed to be like a very, very good way to try out kind of the core of that ideas. So I think for me it's just like, animation is really, really hard, and this is kind of a different approach. Like, you don't need to, like, in animation you need to plan, and structure and budget and so on, and there's nothing about this playfulness left there. So I think that this is a different kind of way to approach it, and using it with kids is really demonstrating that.
Okay, I think
we
that's
hope
what
to sell
we
action figures and. Yeah.
I think that's what we have time for. Thank you so much, Filip and Simon. And thank you all for coming and for watching, and I think we'll keep the Twitter feed alive, hashtag CMK12. And you can also watch this whole day of seminars at the STDH website. Do you still want to say something, Josephine?
Thanks everybody for today. Thanks for everybody who joined us on the webpage as well. And a huge thank you to our lovely moderator.
Oh, thank you.
So great job. And can we have
chocolate.
All our speakers from today up on stage, please? I'm sure there'll be more questions for each and every one of you. Thank you, Inga. But we're going to give you some drinks. Thanks, Inga. And they're waiting just outside. So from the Stockholm-Mälardalen of Dramatic Arts and
okay, you need to move a little bit
Filmpool
closer
Stockholm-Mälardalen. We hope to do this again sometime, and we'll hope to see you back there next year. And did everyone?
Yeah, I put mine on the chair.
And
I thought maybe I can get another one. Yeah.
Thanks to my friends in the control room who did a great job today, Mirko and everyone else. And yeah, drinks time. Yay!
And now there's some cider outside so we can mingle for a while.